financing especially has been one of the biggest impediments to moving forward on the sustainability agenda, but is also an area of nearly unlimited potential. Fast-acting and affordable development financing continues to be lacking, which leaves established means of achieving economic prosperity underfunded. Many well-intentioned opportunities have been left on the table. But obviously, it's not only financing where the private sector comes in. For instance, the industries and technologies need to unlock a just, climate-smart future represents a huge business opportunity at this time. This serves the interests of businesses, society, and the precious planet that we all share. So let us meet this moment with our best ideas and in a spirit of cooperation. I look forward to greater opportunities for the government, the United Nations, and the private and third sectors to work hand in hand to de-risk investments to the SDGs. Our collective health and prosperity depend on us working together. And so I thank you for taking the time to be with us today at this forum. And I do hope that you find the discussions and exchanges meaningful as we work within the decade of action to accelerate the achievements towards the SDGs. I'm extremely optimistic about what we can accomplish together. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Cornel. He gave us the opening remarks earlier on, and certainly we always welcome his remarks, always speaking about the ability for us to attain SDGs, to achieve SDGs. So you're going to hear the common thread throughout most of the conversations that we've had and most of the deliveries that we've had: diversity, equity, inclusion, sustainability. The fact that what we really want is respect of all human rights, the opportunity for all, the access for all in an environmentally friendly way. And what we're simply saying is that all of this cannot be achieved if we do not have collective effort, if there is no cooperation, collaboration, or strategic partnerships. I do want to take the opportunity to just acknowledge and to thank our sign language interpreters. You saw Denku Wedderburn earlier on, and I see Antoinette Tony Aiken. Thank you so very much for supporting and for facilitating members of the hearing impaired as well as deaf community. So you just heard from Dr. Gary Cornel, UN Resident Coordinator, and now we make way for Imega Breeze McNabb, Executive Director, PSOJ. She's known for her extensive experience in building membership organizations through partnerships and for her innovative skills in fostering constructive relationships among stakeholders. Please make her welcome.
Thank you very much. Dr. Sarah Reed, or Master of Ceremonies, Dr. Gary Cornel, or UN Resident Coordinator, Dr. Dana
are you muted? Let me just check.
No, I am unmuted.
No, she's not muted. I'm a professional when it comes to lip reading, by the way. So we are just ensuring that we can hear you, but we're letting you know that you look absolutely fantastic.
Thank you. I don't know what the problem is though.
Okay, I'm hearing her, but very low. So we're just going to see, let's see if we can get her. Okay, so I believe our persons on Zoom say that they can hear her just fine. Okay, I'm seeing we hear her fine. All right, hearing well, I will no longer interrupt. Imega, over to you.
All right, let me proceed. Dr. Dana Dixon, our Chief Business Development Officer of the Jamaica National Group, and our keynote speaker this afternoon. Distinguished panelists, our key partners, everyone online, good afternoon. I bring warm greetings on behalf of the private sector organization of Jamaica to our friends and partners at the United Nations in Jamaica, the Caribbean, and beyond. Many congratulations to you on the celebration of your 76th anniversary under the theme Partnerships for Peace, Planet, and Prosperity. The theme beautifully sums up our own deep commitment to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. You might ask why the PSOJ would be committed. I would respond with another question. Are the Sustainable Development Goals only for governments to strive for? Far from it. We believe that the private sector has a unique and important role to play in helping to create a world that is more secure and prosperous, to nurture an environment that is both healthy and thriving. In fact, at the PSOJ, we need to work hand in hand with the public sector and our development partners as we work to overcome challenges and make the SDGs a reality. The SDGs are ambitious goals, and as we seek SDG 17, Partnerships for the Goals. How are we planning to achieve this? We have already taken some meaningful steps towards implementing the SDGs. The goals are overlapping, interconnected, and empowering. They can work, and we must make them work. As an umbrella organization, the PSOJ is working with its members, large and small, to plant 500,000 trees. This is 500,000 of the government's projected 3 million trees to be planted. It's SDG 13. Take urgent action to combat climate change and its impact. And it is SDG 15, Restoring Life on Land. We have also partnered with UNICEF and others to develop what we call the Safe Spot, 24/7 child helpline for under 18. That has to be SDG 3, good health and well-being, and SDG 16, creating peaceful societies for all. Our children are more vulnerable than ever to abuse and domestic violence, and their mental and physical health and safety must be protected. Then there is our partnership with the Ministry of Health and Wellness and UNICEF through the Private Sector Vaccination Initiative. This includes a web-based tracking system for vaccines. That's SDG 3. Our Energy, Environment and Climate Change Committee continues to work hard on helping to set up sustainable environmental best practices for employers across industries. Of paramount importance is the continued movement towards rolling out a complete ban on single-use plastic. Responsible consumption and production is SDG 12. It is a critical one for the private sector as we move towards a greener future. Between 2000 and 2017, according to the UN, our global material footprint has increased by 70%. That footprint has to be much lighter. For our health and to achieve SDG 11, sustainable cities and communities, it is all about improving our quality of life. Entrepreneurship is one of the tools we can use to restore and rebuild our economy post-COVID. In the short term, the PSOJ helped to develop the e-commerce national delivery solution END, connecting consumers to small businesses during curfew hours. The response has been positive, but we need to pursue all the opportunities of the digital pathway much further for our businesses. Large, small, and in particular at this time, micro businesses. SDG 8 is about decent work and economic growth. The rapidly evolving digital marketplace can certainly provide both. None of this can be accomplished without a safe, secure environment. The PSOJ's National Security and Justice Committee is committed to finding solutions. That's SDG 16, Peace and Justice. Our collaboration with the UN Office for Disarmament Affairs and the UNDP for the Saving Lives Entity Salient Initiative represents a proactive and sustained multi-sectoral efforts towards accomplishing this goal. The program's focus on reducing armed violence in Jamaica is a critical step in addressing one of our country's greatest obstacles to growth, crime. Once again, I want to repeat this mantra. We must work together as we assess and reassess the needs of our society. We need to plan and discuss and prepare. And most of all, keep our eyes on the goals. We cannot allow ourselves to be distracted. We must not be disheartened. We must not lose sight. We know we have the tools for success. We must be bold enough to use them. The SDGs are all about taking action. We at the PSOJ and the private sector are ready for action. And we take the challenges in hand, whether it is climate change, COVID-19, crime, or unemployment. We must work urgently to restore our society to equitable, safe, and sustainable levels of productivity and wealth creation. We owe it to ourselves and to future generations. Thank you, and we look forward to a continued productive dialogue this afternoon.
Oh my goodness, thank you so very much. I'm Mega Breeze McNabb, Executive Director of the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica. Such a spirited speech. Keep our eyes on the goals. We have the tools for success. We just have to be brave enough to use them. She certainly reminded us that, the endeavor and the efforts to achieve the desired outcomes and the SDGs can't be left to governmental agencies or organizations alone. It requires partners who can combine strengths under the shared vision. And speaking of partners, I certainly would like to take the opportunity to acknowledge our partners without whom all of this collaboration, these efforts, the outcomes, the meaningful action that we see would not be possible. So we'd like to acknowledge the Planning Institute of Jamaica, the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica, the Sandals Foundation, Kingston Creative, Grace Kennedy Foundation, the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport, the Governor General's Program for Excellence and King's House, the AC Hotel Kingston, where we're broadcasting live, ATL Automotive, BMW and Mini, Audi and Kia showrooms, Spanish Court Hotel, the S Hotel Montego Bay, Jewel Paradise Cove and Playa Group Hotels, the Embassy of Spain, Embassy of the Federal Republic of Germany, the Canadian High Commission, the Nigerian High Commission, the Jamaica Stock Exchange, and of course the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. Thank you so very much for always being there whenever we reach out, whenever we have projects, whenever we need to get things done. You always help us to get the impact that we absolutely need. So, Dr. Dana Morris Dixon is a transformational leader and business strategist who has a record of successfully completing major strategic projects in both the private and public sectors in the Caribbean and across the world. She currently serves as the Chief Business Development and Marketing Officer at the Jamaica National Group and is responsible for key strategic initiatives across the conglomerate. She's fiercely committed to the advancement of women as senior executives on boards and in politics, and has served on numerous boards and committees. We're so honored and so privileged to have her as one of our keynote speakers today. Ladies and gentlemen, kindly welcome Dr. Dana Morris Dixon.
Thank you very much, host extraordinaire, Dr. Terry Carell-Reid. I've been on from this morning and you've done a fantastic job marshalling all of the activities today, so I want to thank you for that. Dr. Gary Conneal, the resident coordinator, Mrs. Imega Breeze, who made me not need to speak because she spoke so eloquently and so beautifully about the role of the private sector. And to all the partners, organizers, to everybody listening today, good afternoon to all of you. I have to start by especially thanking Dr. Conneal for inviting me to speak at this partnership forum today, which also celebrates the 76th anniversary of the United Nations. Now, in my former life, I was an academic and I lectured in international relations at the University of the West Indies. So I spent many years teaching international relations, and the UN Charter was a big part of my work and my teaching. So it's been quite interesting for me to get the opportunity to speak here in relation to the United Nations and its work. Of course I'm going to start, I'm at a UN event, I'm going to go back to the UN Charter, which serves as a key framework for multilateralism, which is, in my mind, just partnership writ very big. In the preamble, when you go to the ends, which is looking at really the goals for this charter and the United Nations, it speaks to employing international machinery for the promotion of the economic and social advancement of all peoples. It goes further in Article 1 to talk about the goal being to achieve international cooperation in solving international problems of an economic, social, cultural, or humanitarian character. And throughout it, you see references to the goal of higher standards of living, full employment, conditions of economic and social progress, and development. That charter laid out the general framework that would, it was hoped, lead to peace and prosperity. It was a true partnership of all countries, most countries at the time. Its ideals were good and remain noble even today. I was so happy to see the launch of our common agenda last month, and I'll use that term a lot. Our common agenda, it is such a powerful term which sets out an updated and more inclusive framework for multilateralism going forward. It raises some interesting questions about the future of the UN and multilateralism generally, which, as I said, is simply global partnerships. But it highlights that the founding principles are still sound and that the framework for cooperation and partnership is needed more than ever to tackle the many complex global problems, including climate change, global inequality, gender inequity, economic insecurity, human rights concerns, and the list goes on. We must remind ourselves all the time, and I heard, I may have said that I heard it in some of the other presentations, that the UN Sustainable Development Goal, the last one, is partnership to achieve the goals. And this was quite fitting, as there is nothing that can be achieved nationally or globally without partnerships. 2 years ago, I was in the United Kingdom, and I was on a call with the JN Group CEO, the Honorable Earl Jarrett, and we were trying to figure out how we were going to present our new entity to the diaspora market and to the broader UK market. We decided to undertake something that hadn't been done before. He had this lovely vision of having the first Caribbean bank in the United Kingdom to support our diaspora community. And it was a big deal. There are not many banks that have been authorized in recent years, and there had never been a Caribbean bank that got full authorization from the Bank of England. And we were on the cusp of doing that. And we had a conversation about, how we would speak to the media, the press, to people about this new entity. And I went back to my notes from then over the weekend, because that conversation led to a conversation about the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And we were talking about it, and we were talking about how many partnerships we had in the UK and how in supporting the diaspora we had to get very close to the church. We had to do a lot of community work and work with community organizations that were serving the Caribbean and African diaspora quite a bit. We talked about the work that Paulette Simpson was doing in terms of from the palace to going to funerals every Saturday and Sunday. And just that notion that, these partnerships were so important and connection to the diaspora was so important. And we went back to the Sustainable Development Goals, and we're going through them just like Amiga just did. And we were talking about our work in the UK and linking them back to the Sustainable Development Goal. And it's so important that as organizations, that the Sustainable Development Goals aren't just something on paper, aren't just something that we talk about in our sessions or in these nice fora, that it's actually something that's alive. That as we're doing our business, as we're talking to reporters or anyone about why we're doing what we are doing, that we're also connecting it back to that. And in its broadest sense, the greatest achievement of the UN, in my mind, is the blueprint it has established, not only for countries to attain harmony and sustainable development, but the example it provides for sectors and organizations such as mine to embrace in their effort to impact lives, to embrace the effort of impacting lives while achieving profit. And, isn't that what the Global Compact is all about? And I know we're going to hear a lot about that Global Compact, but that's really what it is. How do we play a role while also achieving those profit motives? And I think for all of us in the private sector, we have to have a commitment to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, and they need to undergird all of the work that we do. I was also looking back at an idea on some of the work that we've done, and I heard Dr. Conneal speak about small business loans. And in our organization, that was one area that many years ago, when we started the JN Small Business Loans Company to do micro lending, a lot of people, even people on our board, and I know Urjart speaks about this all the time, thought that's crazy. You can't lend unsecured to individuals who don't have many things. And furthermore, you said you're going to use their fridge and their stove as collateral. That's crazy. And we have to understand that in addressing a lot of the issues that are confronting us, we're going to have to be bold and we're going to have to do things different. And there are going to be times when there's going to be resistance to it. But the reality is that we needed to get loans to individuals who ordinarily would not qualify, who ordinarily did not have assets that they could use as collateral. And so you had to boldly move. But even though the organization wanted to boldly move, it understood it needed partnerships to help in undertaking that risk. And so there came in the partnership with the government, through particularly the Development Bank of Jamaica. We also got support from international donors who were also very much seeing this as an area that we needed to pay more attention to. And so we had the USAID and the US International Development Finance Corporation working with our group in terms of addressing that problem. So it's not just a private sector entity thinking, okay, this is a new line of business, but it's also how do we solve a problem, and not just solve it on our own, but also partner in solving it. And I think many of us, there are many more things that we can do in terms of our products and our services that are solving some of these concerns and these issues. And sometimes it's not necessarily the most profitable thing, but it's the right thing to do. And there are other partners that we can work with in delivering these products and services. And one of the greatest things is, lending to people unsecured who don't have a lot of assets is actually good business. We found their great credit. They repay their loans. And so that bold move was actually a very good move, because it then proved that we just needed to believe in people and give them the access to the capital that they required at the time. Now, if you think about our national problems, and there are many of them, none of our national or global problems can be solved without partnerships. We speak about climate change, crime, gender inequity in access to good education. All of these and other challenges cannot be resolved by one actor. Now, our private sector is very strong in Jamaica, and Iniga spoke about all of the many initiatives that we have in the private sector. And the private sector is doing quite a bit and is very involved in policy making. And even if we look at the COVID-19 response, we have already seen many instances of private-public partnership, and even the global partnerships there, from the initial COVID task force that brought together people from across the private sector and civil society, to bilateral partnerships in securing much-needed vaccines, even though that has not really been evenly distributed globally, and that's something that I know the UN has been speaking quite a bit to in terms of vaccine, the rollout of vaccines in a very inequitable manner. We've seen initiatives by the private sector, which Amiga spoke to, where they're mobilizing their staff in terms of having access to the vaccines, and many entities privately have been contributing supplies and other much needed equipment to our hospitals. But we're still in a crisis. Partnerships as a concept sounds wonderful, but it really only gets flavor and meaning when we add a framework around it, the policies and the procedures around it, and when we're truly inclusive and breaking down silos. Education is one area that a lot of us in the private sector are spending money on. We're doing it through our foundations or through other initiatives. And so many organizations in Jamaica are focusing on education, and we can understand why. We often hear of the underperformance of our students in Jamaica. The majority of them leave school with no certification. In fact, the data shows that 68% of our children leave high school with no piece of paper with any certification on it. 68%. Our math scores are not improving. We often graduate students without the life skills needed. We intuitively know that to solve our education crisis, that to solve it, we need a whole of society approach. But do we really understand the breadth of the problem? And one of the key things as we do our initiatives is understanding the breadth of the problems. We have students entering grade 1 without the stimulation at home or even the nutrition at home to spur optimal brain development. They're in early childhood institutions that have very valiant teachers that are trying their best, but many who are not adequately trained at that level. They enter grade 1 ill-equipped to learn on a psychosocial level. They're traumatized by violence in their homes and communities and are in some instances abused by those who should care for them. In primary school, they're expected to function normally and to absorb a very intense curriculum. Has anybody seen the PEP curriculum? And to do exams in English when many of them barely speak that language in their daily lives. They go to high school with deficiencies in reading and comprehension and maths and are expected to perform on exams that are not aligned to their abilities or interest. We have many institutions that are failing them. We've seen some of the reports from our Auditor General. And then you add to all of this COVID and the lack of face-to-face access to learning. We're in a crisis in education, and so we understand why everyone is wanting to do a bit of something. And how do we solve all of this? It can only be through real partnerships, and I emphasize the word real. These partnerships must be inclusive, and actions should be coordinated and strategic and guided by data. Solving our education crisis, for example, requires a partnership of the Ministry of Education and every other ministry, the teachers and their union, the private sector. We have a big role to provide support, civil society and their critical interventions in communities, the church, which is very powerful, the diaspora that provides so much support, multilateral partners that have already done a lot, UNICEF, World Bank, IDB, done tremendous work in this area. We also need the entire society to understand the need to protect our children and to listen to them and include them in the decision making. I was so happy for the panel this morning that was doing some of that. And all of this must be undergirded by governance and accountability structures or laws or policies, or interventions must be tested and measured for success. Again, this partnership thing is easy to speak about, but very difficult to implement. There has to be a sound framework for partnership, or else we have a multitude of actors doing dispersed things and not necessarily moving in the same direction. Many social interventions have not had embedded in them the kind of monitoring and evaluation frameworks necessary to truly glean success. In Jamaica, we often have big ceremonies launching initiatives, but we don't often see commensurate achievement events where we talk about the areas of success and the areas of less success so that we can inform future interventions. The Caribbean Policy Research Institute, CAPRI, recently expounded on this deficit, which is seen across the public sector in their report, Testing, Challenges to Measuring Social Programs for At-Risk Youth. This report looked at the billions of spend on social intervention programs by the government. In fact, they estimated that over a little over 10 years, it would have been $386 billion spent on social interventions for at-risk youth, and it concluded that there was little impact on at-risk youth in Jamaica. It is therefore clear that we need interventions informed by research and interventions that have appropriate monitoring and evaluation metrics that can truly measure success. We will, over the course of this event, hear about the wonderful work of many private sector partners and many civil society actors. This work is very important and must be applauded. It is unfortunate, though, that some of this good work still takes place in silos. There are so many education interventions and broader social interventions, but we do not spend enough time talking about the partnerships. Are you partnering with your competitor? And we have a lot of foundations that are doing really interesting things. Are you partnering with the other ones? And sometimes we do and sometimes we don't, but we need to do that a lot more. And I saw one instance of this, I know when I joined my organization, where one of our competitors, but also a friend, is the Victoria Mutual Group. And we both had an interest in education, and we both worked together on a program that was working in our schools to try to train up the leaders, because we felt that critically, one area of importance was the leadership and having leadership training in schools that were underperforming. And so the two entities came together, investing $100 million each, and were able to put in place that program with other partners. And that's the kind of partnerships we want to see amongst our private sector partners, and more of that. There's some of it, but we need to see a lot more of that. We will only be able to solve our complex problems, and there are many of them. I only went through education. Our complex problems, if we break down the silos and truly work together. Globally, we're seeing a lot of discussion about ESG, environment, social, governance frameworks. And so there's a shift away from corporate social responsibility and more to the language of ESG. And we see global companies doing ESG disclosures, talking about how the work that they're doing and how their business is standing up for the environment and social issues and has a sound governance framework. When you read ESG, it feels very much like you are reading about the Global Compact. That's what it feels like, the same thing. I'm in an organization, a global organization that determines where it invests its donor funds by the commitment to ESG goals. And I think in our country and in our region, we need to look at how we can incentivize this and how we can also show companies that are truly committed, and maybe even having investment funds that are specifically geared towards companies that are consistent with these ESG goals, which are basically global compact goals if you look at it. In closing, I urge all of us to truly embrace the UN's Global Compact. It outlines clearly how the private sector and civil society partners too can make the sustainable development goals come alive. Corporate social responsibility, or ESG, which is much more measurable, is not just a strategy. It's about truly understanding that our common future rests on all sectors of society playing their part in solving the increasingly complex challenges we see in our country and in our world. The private sector is critical, and many of us are heeding the call for public service. Where we must improve is in ensuring that we partner with each other and that we have evidence-based interventions that employ appropriate monitoring and evaluation frameworks, and that in our business practices, we truly live up to the ideals of protecting our common future. Thank you again for the invitation, and I look forward to hearing the other presentations and discussions in this session.
My goodness, Dr. Dana Morris Dixon, who at first in her introduction said, Imega came and she wasn't even certain that she would need to speak. Thank you so very much for those remarks. Thank you for your honesty and your transparency. While you were speaking, I was taking a lot of notes, and I'm sure what you said resonated with a lot of our attendees. And you said it starts with a founding principle. You think of the issue or the problem that you're trying to solve, and something that you said that was so important was, it may not always be profitable, but it is the right thing to do. And then afterwards, you have the dialogue and the discussion. Then there's framework and strategy. You apply the commitment, you align with the right partners, but then you remind us that nothing nationally or globally can be achieved without partnerships. So then you implement. But most importantly, you must measure. what is the data, what is the data saying, and how can we use that data to improve. Thank you for reminding us that sometimes we don't have to reinvent the wheel, but instead find other partners that can help us to do the same work or to get the same desired outcome. Thank you so very much for that wonderful delivery. I'm sure everyone benefited from what you just said. And so from that, and it's very interesting because you mentioned the UN Global Compact, which we will hear about more after we do this video presentation highlighting UN programs. Watch this.
We are currently implementing a project entitled Conserving the Natural Resources Through Innovative Agricultural Techniques in the Negril Environmental Protection Area through seed funding from the UNDP implemented GES Small Grants Program. We also have received co-financing from the National Environment and Planning Agency through the IEECO Regional Project, which is implemented by the United Nations Environment Program. So there are 3 expected results from the project. 1, which is the establishment of a climate-smart agriculture demonstration site. 2, improved livelihoods for the farming community. And 3, sustainable land management across the Negril Environmental Protection Area. So here you'll see the greenhouse that is currently constructed. It forms a part of the Climate Smart Agriculture Demonstration site. This greenhouse will expose the farmers to greenhouse farming that will enable them to adapt to the climate change impacts and also to basically have experience in these different techniques that they can adapt in their farming practices so as to be better able to carry out their farming activities. The site will also feature a hydroponics unit where they will be exposed to growing lettuce in outside of the soil rather. So they'll be using water with nutrients passing along the roots of the plant.
My name is Vernon Lefevre. I live at Cardwell District, Green Island, PO. I'm farming on a piece of government land property. No infrastructure is on it, but I will produce like cassava, bamboo cane, sugar cane, and I do like pear, avocado.
My name is Katie Ann Campbell. I'm from Matchtown in Hanover. I'm a farmer. I do livestock and also growing provision. You have sweet potato, you have cassava, I have yams, tomato, sweet pepper, have chow.
The training was informative and educational. We gather a lot. I gather a lot from it. I don't know what I mean, but it was very good. I would commend the trainers. Talk about scouting, gathering information, and acting upon them, and which some of us have not even know what we were doing at first. But after that, going through that program, we learned about scouting. So we did things like we go through scouting. We talk about application of chemical like fertilizer. How to use the fertilizer, the right time to use them. We also learn about the right amount to apply and at the right place where we should apply it on the soil and all of that. Because some people used to just throw fertilizer anywhere, but after going through that program, we learn about the dripping points where you should put the fertilizer and all of that. You know.
I'm really proud of myself from knowing where I started off to where I am now with NEP, that they do a lot for me. They also teach me things that I didn't know about, things that I didn't know to do, how to use the chemical correctly and stuff like that. So I'm really proud of myself to where I've been with NEP at this moment. We also learn about how this with the soil. So whenever you plant something, like I plant the yam here, So now that I plant the yam here and I reap from here, whenever time I'm going on to use to do the sweet potato, you're not going to use but the same area that you use to do that planting. You're going to go to a new area and then you're going to plow up that land and leave it there and then you come back.
I used to like plant the points in row, but now I learned that it is best to use them as a backup, you know, and that is very good.
But now that I go to the training uplifts me, I get more, it pushed me more, it gives me a lot of goals to say, okay, you are heading in the right direction, but you weren't doing it before. In my farming now, I plant more, so I have like more customers, I can do more, like I produce to the hotels and stuff like that. So it do more for me because what I wasn't doing, it makes me doing it now. So at the end of the day, I'm producing more. So I'm expanding now.
So there are other trainings that are currently being planned for the farmers, which we will be engaging in shortly, and that is their personal development and finance. So helping them to approach their farm as a business, taking into consideration documenting their expenses and how they can better set adequate market prices. Also looking at how these change in their techniques will help them to save more. When the greenhouse that is here is complete, they will be going through detailed training in understanding greenhouse operations. So they will be the ones that will be here at the site carrying out the day-to-day management activities so that they can get that hands-on experience. Now, the Negro Area Environmental Protection Trust is really appreciative of the support from the GEF Small Grants Program, which is a UNDP implemented program. So we are happy for the support and the guidance that they have given and the investment that they continue to make to improve the livelihoods of small farmers, and not only farmers, but people at the grassroots level all across the country as they seek to maneuver the different challenges that they face on a daily basis in carrying out their livelihood activities.
I give thanks to NEP so that we can have a better country.
That video actually made my heart smile. I have a different kind of love and respect for our farmers. They are the ones that feed this nation, and a lot of us don't always think about it when we go to our wholesales and our supermarkets, but honestly, we are nothing without our farmers. And just seeing them speak with such confidence, you can see how this entire training program helps them to become empowered and more confident in their abilities, right? So they got the knowledge, they were able to implement it, and then they were able to see the outcome, the increased capacity, and it was just so holistic to watch that development. You know, looking at it, you realize that they benefited not only in terms of personal development and entrepreneurship and finance, but just in all areas. So again, thank you so very much. It's always wonderful to see how the United Nations office in Jamaica, and of course United Nations globally, how they are assisting other persons to become more empowered. So we had our first session earlier this morning, and now we're jumping into our second session, and it is entitled SDG Private and Third Sector Forum, and I cannot wait to see this presentation from the UN Global Compact. And the presenter is Teresa Moldearba, Senior Manager Latin America and the Caribbean, UN Global Compact. Watch this.
Hello, good afternoon. It's very nice being in this forum, and I would like to especially thank Dr. Morris for her kind words of encouragement, hopefully for the private sector to move into the Global Compact and be part of it. I would like to share with you a presentation. Just give me a second. I will start my presentation. Okay. 1 second. So yes, I will. I would like to explain to you what the Global Compact is and what it does around the world. And the first thing to say is how we started out. And it was Kofi Annan, UN Secretary General, in 1919 at the Davos Forum, that he said, I propose that you, the business leaders, and we, the United Nations, initiate a global compact of shared values and principles, which will give a human face to the global markets. And I think this is a great frame to start out, to understand that the United Nations Global Compact is the world-leading voluntary corporate citizen initiative. It is a call for companies to get involved and to commit and voluntarily align to these 10 principles that can be distributed in human rights, labor, environment, and anti-corruption. So what we ask from the Global Compact is to be responsible, to do responsible business aligned with these areas. But we also ask you to be part and to be part of a larger contribution. So the private sector is not only called to do responsible business, but it's also called to contribute to the Sdg Agenda. You have all heard about this agenda, and we understand that, as it was said by Dr. Morris, without partnering, without working together, we cannot really reach the results. We know that this COVID pandemic has thrown us back 10 years in the development agenda. So we do need to work together. And Global Compact is this platform to work together. It's an initiative that is voluntary for the companies and other organizations to join. And it is based on the set of values and principles and creates a network of companies and other stakeholders that allow us to learn and to exchange our best practices. The UN Global Compact gathers 13,000 businesses that are committed to these 10 principles and that year after year report, and I think this is very important, they commit to the 10 principles and they report what they are doing about these principles. We also have within our initiative 3,800 non-business participants, which shows as well that this is a business-led initiative, but at the same time, it's an initiative that puts together in the same space, in the same platform, private sector and third sector as well. In Latin America and the Caribbean, we have around 2,700 companies joining the initiative, and we have around the world 69 Global Compact local networks. What is that? It's the initiative that has taken form as an independent legal entities in different countries. So each of these individual organizations focuses in bringing the global offering to the local level and to the local needs. I think it's interesting for you to know that, if I can move this presentation, that what the local network has told us that are the priorities of the companies that work with them at the local level, you can see that are the same all around the world. Talking on SDGs, general corporate sustainability and the 10 principles, human rights, gender, and climate change. Those are the 4 issues that the local networks work with the companies. And how do they do that? They actively raise awareness about the principles, about the SDG agenda, and how the private sector can contribute to the SDG agenda. They have capacity building, they recognize leadership, they have multi-stakeholder spaces, dialogues that connect government, civil society, UN system, and academia, and other and companies and private sector. We put them together, which sometimes leads to partnerships, but in any case, also directs and facilitates spaces for policy dialogue where private sector representation is essential, but it's not any private sector, it's a private sector that is committed to responsible business and to sustainability. We have made significant progress. We have been able to measure a little bit how is the progress in the corporate world globally. And what we are seeing is that 88% of the companies are taking action, say that they're taking action on SDGs. This is good because in 2016, the prior time we did the measuring, it was 75. So we are advancing. In terms of policies and practices in place related to those 4 areas of the 10 principles, human rights, labor, environment, and anti-corruption, we see that we are around 90% of the companies have embedded policies and practices around these topics, which I think is very significant. So what we do at the Global Compact is tell the company how. How do we do it? Not what you have to do, but how to do it. It's not what business you do, it's how you do business. And we see that 86% of our global and economic system need to refocus on equitable growth. We need to put people in the center of the agenda. There is a significant progress from the business community, and I think it's important to see how we have moved in these 20 years from committing voluntarily to generalistic 10 principles into making specific commitments. And in climate action, for instance, 900 of our companies have signed up for business ambition for 1.5, which means that they have committed to certain emission targets that would put them below the 1.5. We also have, I think it's around 1,000 companies that are in this gender equality program, where 82% of the companies have embedded into their sustainability plans the gender equality issues. And the same, we have a water mandate coalition where we have developed the first framework with our allies and guidance for companies to set contextual water targets. And we have a program that is very exciting one, that brings in the young SDG innovators, young people from corporate world that have brought 200 business innovations and solutions for their corporations to incorporate and advance on the SDGs. So what we see is a world where corporations, companies are able to advance. They have committed several years ago, and they have advanced in these commitments to the 10 principles. They are saying that they are contributing to the Sdg Agenda, but the truth is that we're in a world that is not on track. We need to meet these sustainable development goals. And what we have found is that pre-COVID, the gender gap was in 257 years. The gap was 257 years, and nowadays, a year and a half later, it's 268. We're getting worse. We see domestic violence has risen, depending on where you look at, what part of the world you look into, but it has risen 30% up. We see the poverty has raised 1% globally, which translates into 0.7% increase in child labor. And we see how we are we have a global warming that is predicted to be 3 Celsius degrees, but we are throwing 8 million tons of plastic to the oceans. So we do need to find a way in this decade that we have until 2030. We need to find a way to scale up the global and collective impact. In that sense, the Global Compact has designed a new strategy for scaling this impact, and what it's focusing on is has defined a certain amount of focus areas with impact goals, specific impact goals. We have designed a strategy to connect, learn, and lead with a portfolio of engagement opportunities, with events, the academy, which I will explain what it is, peer learning groups, accelerators, policy and advocacy campaigns, and SIG labs. I will not be so specific, but just to drive you through and get you the general idea of what the Global Compact does at the global level that can later translate into local, is focusing on certain areas. We have worked strongly with human rights, and I do have to say that Latin America in general has a very strong experience in dealing with business and human rights. We're focusing now in labor and decent work, and we're talking about living wages, which I think is a very important issue and concept that should be introduced in the conversation that goes above and beyond human rights. We are addressing climate change, and we're showing in a fairly easy way how a company can measure what their impact is and can incorporate best practices and actions in order to mitigate and to adapt to climate change, which is so important in the Caribbean region. Of course, we have the anti-corruption issue, and during COVID times, we have had several examples at a national level of Global Compact companies joining with UN system, with governments, to ensure that corruption is not happening, especially to give response to COVID needs. And we are touching very strongly the gender equality topic related to the business environment, and of course, SDG integration and transformational development. We like to provide to all companies, doesn't matter the size, the maturity of their actions, if they're starting, if they are in principles of the Global Compact 101, or if they're already, being part of partnerships and advocacy level in the country, we want to provide them a way to walk through their sustainability journey. We give them opportunities to connect with the industry, with experts at the global level. We give them opportunities to learn. Also, we want to find the ones who want to lead and to be champions in the different topics of sustainability. And we want everyone to commit and communicate and say what they're doing, right and wrong, positive and negative. In the positive, see how we can increase it, how we can scale the impact. In the negative, how can we compensate or mitigate the damage we're doing. So we do have several flagship events during the year. Of course, we are participating in the COP26 for climate, Caring for Climate, that will take place in November, just a few weeks from now. We are very strongly working on gender equality, and our flagship event for the year is called the Leaders Summit 2022. That is always in June. We've had the two last versions virtual, and we had, I think it was around 20,000 registration. It's a worldwide event that has activities, global activities and regional activities, and it goes along during 26 hours, we say, chasing the sun, which is very interesting. And we also have a big event. It's called Uniting Business Life during the week of the General Assembly in New York, which has been, again, online this year. So we have several events. We have learning platforms. We have the biggest sustainability library online, the Global Compact library that has publications around all the topics, all the principles, and all the initiatives we have. We also have several tools like around women empowerment principles we did with UN Women, and many other tools that you can find in our library. We have a training. We have the academy sessions that are global, and this next year we will have regional for Central, Caribbean, and South America. And we have The accelerators, which are programs directly addressed for companies to commit and implement best practices on several issues. And as you can see, the accelerators have been very successful. These are run from with a structure from the Global Compact office in New York, but implemented locally. Around 2,300 companies have participated in all these activities, and it's been very, very interesting how it's moving the needle, is really creating impact. And we want to show leadership and be part of the leadership. We work in some issues around with coalitions, with Water Mandate, Oceans, Science-Based Targets, CFO Task Force. So we work in coalition in the topics that are not in our core, but are core to companies. And we do look forward to being part of policy advocacy in all the topics that we are building capacity in the companies and we're helping companies run. So, and finally, we have some call to action campaigns where we focus on a certain topic and looking for a commitment, a public commitment from CEOs, from companies that will lead into policy building, best practices, and actual change in the companies. Very, very important, never forget to communicate. We need to understand what we're doing, set targets, track it, and disclose what we're doing right and wrong. So just with this to finalize, we are very happy to say that the Global Compact is landing in the Caribbean. We're starting out in our work in Barbados and Eastern Caribbean, and we hope to expand very soon to the rest of the Caribbean. We're aiming to see, it is our goal and our wish to have a multi-country local network in the Caribbean, maybe by 2023. We'll see how it evolves, but this means that we need the commitment of the private sector. We need them to be part of this initiative and to start committing with us. So thank you very much all for your kind words and for your support and for this opportunity.
Caribbean UN Global Compact. Just listening to her, I have a greater understanding, the Global Compact of shared values and principles, really breaking it down, drilling it down, and she reminds us, do responsible business, be deliberate in terms of getting these particular targets. She said, put people at the center of the agenda. You have to put people first. You have to put a human face to the global market. And certainly the number that really blew my mind was when she said Social Progress Index estimates that we are 62 years behind schedule. But we remain optimistic, and we know that if we work together collectively, certainly we can shave off a couple years. And it's possible that we may not necessarily be able to achieve everything in the next in the decade, but we certainly will work towards it. So we thank her so very much, and we're very happy to know that the UN Global Compact has arrived in the Caribbean. Now we move from Teresa, and we now welcome Andrea Dempster Chun, co-founder, Kingston Creative. Watch this.
My name is Andrea Dempster, and I am the co-founder and executive director of Kingston Creative. So Kingston Creative is a registered nonprofit organization founded in February 2017, and we're an organization powered by over 100 volunteers and staff that serves the creatives, artists, and communities of downtown. So the work that Kingston Creative does is in two areas. It's around people and it's around place. So in terms of people, we're very focused on uplifting creatives, on providing opportunities for training, opportunities for performance, opportunities for earning through our Creative Hub and our CreaTech project. And in terms of place, we are very focused on transforming downtown Kingston. And this is through murals, creating an art district that is powered by technology. So we use augmented reality in our murals, we create sculptures, and we have lots of performances and activities to activate the space. So the work that we do really focuses on SDGs. First of all, goal number 1, which is no poverty. If creatives can earn, this directly impacts the poverty levels, especially when you focus on the marginalized communities in and around downtown Kingston. And we provide free training certification in business and digital skills, because we feel that our creatives naturally have talent, but what they need is the business skills to support it. And of course, post-COVID, digital skills are critical. We also impact goals 8 and 9, decent work and economic growth and innovation, because we provide opportunities for creatives to convert their talent into a way for them to earn and a way for them to support their families and their communities. And so we also, through innovation, by training creatives, by providing CreaTech opportunities, by leveraging technology, this brings innovation to the space. So we teach about NFTs, about augmented reality, virtual reality. We have virtual reality tours of downtown. So we're all about figuring out how we can leverage technology to make our creative talent even better. We also focus on goal number 11, which is sustainable cities and communities. Sustainability comes in many ways, but people being able to earn from their creative talent and the city being transformed into a space where people want to come, where tourists can come and enjoy what we have, it creates new economic opportunities for people, and that helps our city to become sustainable. So the development of an art district in what was once the abandoned downtown Kingston, which was highly stigmatized, creating the art district helps our city to uplift itself, and we feel that that's a really important goal to be contributing to. So some of the beneficiaries of our work are the artists. They are the primary beneficiaries. Artists, and in particular the artists who come from the communities in and around downtown Kingston. Through our work, we have created over 65 new murals in downtown Kingston. This generates employment. We've had every single month we've had art walks. And so this creates an opportunity for artisans to sell their goods. It creates an opportunity for artists to perform, musicians to perform. And so the direct beneficiaries are the artists and creatives who are often marginalized. We use the term MSMEs, but we don't usually think about creative entrepreneurs. We don't usually think about creatives as business people. And so we are impacting that population. And then specifically, we always make sure to include creatives who live in downtown Kingston. Ownership of what we're doing is very important. And so being inclusive and ensuring that artists from downtown Kingston are integrally involved in all our projects, in the incubator, in the accelerator program, that they're getting their business registered, they're part of the training, and also the mural and performance work that we do. It's very, very important to us, and these are some of the groups that we impact. So the impact of COVID on our industry has been very serious. We would understand that we've been locked down for about 18 months, so a lot of artists have not had the opportunity to perform. Theatre spaces are not usable, cinemas are closed, film screenings, festivals, all of these things have been impacted. And so as a community that we serve has been impacted, we have had to find ways to pivot and to find ways to support them even through COVID. So some of the things that we have done is, of course, we've gone online. So we have transferred a lot of our meetups, our art walks into the online space. We have also given grants. We've given over $47 million worth of grants to creatives. Those creatives who may have been unregistered and therefore weren't eligible to qualify for other kind of support given by the government. So we were able to give grants for creatives to go digital, to take their work online, for them to create websites. We gave consultancy vouchers so that people would build websites for creatives. And so during COVID, it really challenged our team to be innovative about how we were operating and to how to help our creative community to really operate innovatively as well. So Kingston Creative works to catalyze change in the creative sector by partnering with entities like the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport, the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce, as well as the Jamaica Social Investment Fund, the IDB Lab, and many other partners, including the EU and lots of private sector partners that cheer us on, support our work. So UNESCO has declared 2021 the year of creative economy for sustainable development. The Sustainable Development Goals are a global compact, a global partnership, cross-cutting goals that apply to many, many countries, but particularly to creative nations like ourselves. Creativity is a way for us to achieve sustainable development for our nation. And so in the work that we do, we seek to educate, alleviate poverty, create better lives for creatives, because in turn, they will then create better lives for their community, they will have access to global markets, and this uplifts our whole nation. So we see the SDGs, achieving the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, as integral to what we do to benefit Jamaica. Our vision for Jamaica, I would say, is in two parts, in people and place. In terms of people, we want to see a Jamaica by 2030 where people can express themselves, where they can earn, where they can have a decent living, where their cities are safe, where you can walk downtown freely, enjoying all the culture that is here, where there are no marginalized communities, no borders. And we believe that art is a lever to both transforming lives of people and the space of our old city. And so we're really excited about using art for social and economic development, and to see a transformation in our city of downtown, and a transformation in the lives of creatives, in how their work is valued, in how they are seen, and where policy sits in our national development plan. So this is what we're really working towards, and I look forward to personally seeing a downtown which is vibrant, full of art, full of performance, lots of creative businesses clustered there, and this is what we hope to really see by 2030. So we'll just keep working at it.
That is so impressive. Such a stunning video. I listened to every single word that Andrea said a while ago. Andrea, are you there? I have so many questions, by the way. I'm just checking to see if we have her online.
Hi, Terry Carell. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. How are you? And congratulations on such a job well done.
Oh, thank you so much on behalf of all the creatives and all of our volunteers that make it happen.
No, absolutely. So the question I have for you, I grew up in Portmore, St. Catherine, and so I shop downtown, and I still shop downtown. And I remember so many people, uptown, middle class, saying, I don't go downtown. I would never go downtown. Downtown is dangerous, and you spoke about it, the stigma that is attached to it. When you and of course your team came up with this idea of creating this art district, and not just creating this art district anywhere, but downtown, transforming it, creating jobs. You must have been told you must be crazy, right? You must have received a lot of resistance or kickback, or did you actually get a lot of persons saying, yeah, we're on board? Tell me about that.
We got a lot of two things, a lot of fear from people who have been told since childhood and for generations, don't go below the clock, which is halfway tree.
Correct.
But we also got a lot of hope. There were some companies who said, we've tried this before, we won't invest because we tried this before and it didn't work. But from actual regular people, and of course from our creative community and the people downtown, we got a lot of hope and a lot of engagement and a lot of support. So we're really thankful because we just started from the ground up, and with that groundswell of support, we were able to actually make a good start on catalyzing an art district in downtown Kingston. We're at 65 murals now and lots of different activities. We've actually built a creative hub, which is at 107 Harbour Street, where creatives can have offices and be trained. So we've made a good start, and just starting with people who really believe in the vision.
I'm so happy for you. I mean, I remember the first time hearing about Kingston Creative and actually seeing the implementation and what it is now, coming from that seed and actually seeing people benefit from the process. And I believe, maybe for you it may not feel this way, but as an outsider looking in, it looks as if you did it in such a short, period of time. For persons who might be listening or who might be watching, who have they have a dream, they want to be able to create this amazing impact while keeping the SDGs a part of that dream and that goal. What is your advice, especially if you're going to take something like the arts that we tend to talk about, Jamaica, we're creative, we love our arts and our artists, but we know from a monetary standpoint, many of our artisans do not benefit. We do not benefit. And then you take a place, and so we're talking about the people, and then you take a place like downtown that has been rejected for so many years and ostracized and isolated and known for vulnerable communities, and then you decide to bring something so beautiful. For persons who have that dream and they know that they're going to be fighting an uphill battle where the odds are stacked against them, what are the lessons? What is the advice that you've learned on your own, or maybe advice that you got that you think you should pass on?
I mean, our internal mantra, that's a great question, by the way. Our internal mantra is collaboration over competition.
Yes.
And, you know, what that really boils down to is partnership. And so we have formed this group of partners that come from private sector, public sector, and also third sector. And we found where everyone's common goals intersect. And so we're able, with this partnership power and, you know, with the team behind us, we're able to move forward. I think the key to it is getting strong partners on board, articulating a clear vision, and not letting obstacles stop you. Sometimes you will come up against obstacles and you just find another alternative path to go around. And also the 10-year vision, we're just at year 4. So, you know, we're not there yet, and we're just taking it a little bit at a time and making sure that we make consistent progress. Consistent progress is key.
I am impressed. You literally just said 4, and you're saying that, you know, this is really not it. You know, this isn't really what we hope to have as an outcome. I can't wait to see what your celebration of your 10th year will look like. Finally, my last question to you. You know, when you spoke about articulating this goal, it's very important, finding a common goal that will appeal to partners, that will align with the right partners, and, you know, putting this all together. For persons who have this idea and they want to pitch, right? They need to pitch. What are 3 things that they must have? What are the 3 things that they probably need to consider before they make that pitch to that partner, besides the common goal?
And so, I mean, I would first invite them. We're actually having a free training session in how to pitch and in how to package your idea as an investable project. So there's 2 training sessions being delivered at the hub. So if there really is someone out there who's interested, we're actually training people in that this Friday and next Friday. But I think you have to have people see what's in it for them.
Yes.
You know, you have to articulate clearly what your impact will be. And then you have to craft a plan that has measurable goals and come back and say, hey, accountability, we hit step number 1. Are you with us for step number 2? I think accountability is key. An earlier speaker, I think, had spoken about how, you know, we love to have these announcements, grand announcements of huge plans.
Yes, Dr. Dixon.
I'm a believer in small steps. Let's take a baby step together. Let's come back to you, report to you that the baby step was taken, and then let's take that next step towards the goal. So just take it small, take it incrementally, and in things like this, keep the community with you. For us especially, it's very, very important that the community of downtown Kingston is with us every single step of the way. Otherwise, it's not sustainable. And so, yeah, just keep the people at the heart of everything you do, take small steps, and make sure people know the what's in it for me, that it's very, very clear what impact you're going to have and how it's going to benefit your partners.
Andrea, I'm just letting you know that you're a boss. I'm just letting you know right now that you are a boss. And I've often said, you know, besides tourism, besides our music and our sports, I've always said, as someone who loves to travel, you know, I would love to have persons come to Jamaica and die to see the artwork. They want to go and see a sculpture that is not found anywhere else in the world, to really create and turn this entire country into a beautiful canvas. That's really what I want to see, and I believe that you are totally on your way, and I cannot wait to see how this all unravels. Andrea Dempster Chung, co-founder Kingston Creative, thank you so very much for taking that very simple idea. It might have seemed simple. It was such a simple seed, and to look at the impact and the influence that it has had over people and place is just simply stunning. Thank you so very much for all the work you do, and we wish you all the best as we hit year number 10 in 6 years.
Thank you, Terry Carell. The real boss is Jamaican culture. So we have to tip our hat to all the creatives and to our very, very powerful global culture. That's what's really driving everything forward.
Thank you so very much. Have a good one. Be safe for the rest of 2021 and beyond. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Oh man, I love Kingston Creative. Oh, I love it. I love it. So we move from Andrea Dempster Chung, that is really just giving you a real life example of how you can take this idea, you can totally have the SDGs as a part of your core values and manifesting it in such a way that you can actually measure the impact. Now we move to Heidi Clark, Executive Director, Sandals Foundation.
Heidi Clark. I am the Executive Director of the Sandals Foundation. The mission of the Sandals Foundation is really about using tourism to drive positive change into the far-reaching corners of our community. Tourism is the biggest economic driver in this region, and there's no reason why it can't go from our shores to every corner. So for us, it's really about using our brand name. It's about harnessing the goodwill of our corporate partners and our travel partners. It's about reaching to our team members and using their expertise and their manpower to get out into communities, and of course the passion of our travelers. We want to make Jamaica a great place to live, but we also want to make it a place that people feel safe, that they want to come and explore our beautiful natural beauty, and then of course our history and our culture. There's so much to offer here. This year, our company celebrates 40 years, which is a huge milestone for us. The foundation itself is 12 years old this year. But for us, we really feel that the roots of our foundation were set 40 years ago when our company began. It has been the DNA of the Stewart family, and in turn, the heart of everything we do as a company. Before CSR was even a buzzword, we have been giving back and working with local communities to see how we build them. The foundation was really about a way to scale up what we've been doing and do it at a more sustainable level. So our key pillars are really education, environment, and community, and that really covers a lot. But to be very honest, education underpins all we do. And it's not just about educating citizens of every age in basic literacy and numeracy, and ensuring that our schools have great infrastructure that are really trying to provide quality education for all. But it's about education in the areas of health. It's about education in the areas of environment, because knowledge is power. And having these tools helps us to lead healthier lifestyles. It helps us to preserve our natural resources, and those are all things that help to build stronger communities. When we look at one of the most important focus areas here in the Caribbean, it's all about reduction of poverty. How are we as a company and a foundation doing that? Well, it's really about being innovative with local industries, and it's about our purchasing power. So through the foundation, we have worked to build the capacity of local SMEs, artisans, horticulturists, agriculture, with direct linkages to the tourism industry. For us, it is about doing workshops to build capacity, equipment donations, bringing up products so that we're increasing outputs, having better outputs, and enabling SMEs to employ more individuals. And it really comes a complete circle. It is about highlighting local, buying local, focusing on local, and building local. And for us, we're seeing the benefits, we're seeing how it's benefiting businesses and how it's really strengthening communities.
I think Adam.
When we look at the Caribbean region, Jamaica, all of our beautiful islands on a whole, climate change has really been something that we need to focus on. Although we are one of the most beautiful regions in the world, we're also one of the most vulnerable regions. And because of that, we have done a lot in investing and working with coastal communities and our local schools to not only educate on how intertwined we are with our environment, but how dependent we are on it. So for us, it's about investing in marine and terrestrial spaces that are under protection and seeing how we can build on that. It's about environmental education in schools. It's about training in our communities for disaster relief to build their resilience. It is a huge focus area. It is what we sell. We don't sell a resort. We sell our natural resources and the beauty of this region. And we have the power to build our reefs and to restock our fish if we all lived a little more conscientious. So for us, that's a huge driving force. The Sounds Foundation has always focused on rural communities as the beneficiaries of our work. We feel that rural communities are often left behind. They're the forgotten ones. Urban communities have a lot more access. When we go into a rural community and we are able to bring digital education and digital access, and we're able to do training, and we're able to engage women who head up a lot of the households and our young people who are a lot more vulnerable because of that lack of exposure. For us, it's not just about empowering that generation, but it is about empowering the generations that will follow. We recognize that this pandemic has certainly set us back economically, development-wise, and also for many people emotionally. But it has also reset and reprioritized a lot of things that we need to now focus on. From the environment to looking at, particularly here in Jamaica and the Caribbean, the digital needs of education and how we've had to kind of move at a very fast pace to ensure our children are getting equal opportunities at education. It is also looking at the health gaps and how our hospitals have been able to cope during this time. And what I think has been very interesting is it has brought people together. So it has brought together public and private sector. It has brought together international donors and governments. And it has really made us realize that we all have strength to kind of lean on, that we need to work together to meet the needs and build the strength. And I think that this time has actually done that. You know, we've recognized where the gaps and the needs are, and how we all need to focus going forward. Not only has it really made people reprioritize doing good, whether they're at home or in their communities, but it has reprioritized that everywhere they go and every life they touch, they want to do good, which is a fantastic opportunity for the travel industry, because now more than ever, we can have tourism drive positive change in far-reaching areas and far beyond our doors. I think for us at the Sounds Foundation, we have been super blessed. We have been blessed by incredible partnerships. And partnerships have really been what make our work possible. We can work with corporate partners, international donors, incredible people like UNEP, Coca-Cola, Sesame Street. So whether it's Sandals and Beaches corporate partners or people that just want to help make a difference, we've been able to utilize their mission with our boots on the ground, and make things possible. But more than that, there are so many incredible grassroots organizations here in Jamaica and across the Caribbean making things happen. And what they really need is a voice and investment. And we have been privileged to be able to partner with them and give them that voice, because they are really the ones making things happen on a day-to-day basis. And truthfully, it's not about reinventing the wheel. It is about scaling up what works and taking that to new heights. And we're really pleased that using and utilizing our strengths, each other's strengths, we've been able to build on what works and learn from that. Every action that we take on a daily basis was aligned with the 17 SDGs, then we will be making positive progress towards peace and prosperity here in Jamaica and across the world. It's when we really lose sight of the bigger picture and these goals that we lose sight of why we're doing what we're doing. So I think they really set the precedent for moving forward. And let's be honest, for us to prosper, everybody has to prosper. You know, one man prospering doesn't make the world a great place. So I think the SDGs really set precedent for that. And I'm very pleased that we're now looking at all of our projects and programs and how we align with those. For Jamaica for 2030, I mean, there's so much I desire for this country. I would like to see a country where people have more equal opportunities to good health, to better education, just really about opportunities in the economic space. Our small businesses have more footing, and where people are looking out for one another. And the SDGs are really the goals that are going to enforces everything we do, every little action we do on a day-to-day basis aligns with that. Jamaica has so much potential, as does the rest of the Caribbean. If we align ourselves with good intentions and the greater picture, the big goals, the 17 SDGs that will guide us, we have the potential to be a country that people really do want to work, live, raise families, and do business.
Sandals Foundation covering so many different SDGs, making such a great impact within the communities and the world, considering it's such a global brand. Heidi, how are you? Welcome.
Good afternoon, I'm great. How are you? Good to be here.
I am not bad. While I was watching it, I got all the feels in the world because, fun fact, my very first job at the age of 18 was at Sandals Montego Bay as a playmaker. So Sandals has a very special place in my heart, and that's where I learned about the Sandals Foundation and everything else that you guys were doing. So this gives me all the feels as I listened to you and I watched the video. Thank you for all the work that you do. I have a question here from Ashley Gordon _Samuels, who asks, what's one thing that you would encourage other players in tourism to do, especially hoteliers, in regards to impact, climate change, and other areas of development?
So, there's so many things we can actually do. Consumers and travelers in particular are becoming more and more conscientious. So really and truly it's about providing opportunities. And those opportunities come in the form of getting people out and getting them exposed to the region. It's not just about seeing the hotel. It's about how they are letting people know about what's happening in the country. Every little thing from having items in your gift shop that are focusing on local to having, agricultural products in your buffet, but showcasing where they're coming from and then utilizing some of those funds that are coming into the tourism dollar to build the capacity of local.
Yes.
So it's about reinvesting in the artisans and helping to train, and it's about, investing in farmers. All of us have the potential to engage our guests and our team members to do so much more. So I just think it's about providing opportunity.
Oh, absolutely. And just a final question for other persons who might be watching, organizations, whether small, medium, or large, and they're inspired, for example, by the work that you do, or they want to tackle some of the SDGs that you tackle. What are some of the key indicators that you use to measure? So you know that you're helping out in schools, you're helping with literacy, you're helping with the coastal and marine communities, you're helping in these areas. What are some of the key indicators that even you would look at to say, good job, we did a great job, we need to keep on investing here, or maybe we need to go back to the drawing board? What do we look for?
So it's difficult to say just one thing because there's so many different areas that we operate. So in the marine environment, we work very closely with NEPA and the specialists that are looking at our progress with growth, with fish counts, with coral growth. When we look at schools, we're really looking at how are they performing.
Yeah.
Are the teachers, are the parents getting on board, are the programs that we're running, they're really engaging people, and is it making a difference to children's academic performance?
Yeah.
Same thing with scholarships, same thing with the health sector. If we're working with a hospital, when we give a donation of equipment, it's not just about turning around and walking away. We want to know later on during the year, how has that equipment impacted what you have been able to do and how you've been able to deliver your services.
Yes.
And if it's done really well, then we do it again. So start small. Andrea spoke to that. You start small, you do pilot projects, you partner with the right people. It's not about us going in and saying what works. It's all about partnerships. And then it's about taking what works and scaling it up.
Thank you so very much. You actually echoed a lot of sentiment from early this morning where they said it has to be constant. You always have to do follow-up. You always have to be updating and reassessing to see what needs to be done, what needs to be changed, and what needs to remain the same. Heidi, love to you and everyone at the Sandals Foundation. Thank you so very much for all the work you do, and we just wish you all the best in all of the other endeavors that you have, not only with Sandals, but everywhere that you choose to touch and impact. We thank you so very much.
Thank you.
No problem, no problem. I love these power presentations. I don't know about you guys, and if you're loving these power presentations, let us know. Use a hashtag UN Day, hashtag UN Jamaica. Let us know what resonates, what are the things that inspire you, and if you had any aha moments, we would certainly love to hear them. So we move from Heidi Clark, Executive Director, Sandals Foundation, and now we look at a power presentation by Caroline Mahfood, Executive Director, GK Foundation.
Hi, my name is Caroline Mahfood. I'm the CEO of the Grace Kennedy Foundation. So the Grace Kennedy Foundation is 40 years old. We're one of the oldest corporate foundations in Jamaica, and our primary focus is on education, environment, and healthy lifestyles. In 2019, the Grace Kennedy Foundation embarked on a new strategic plan, and what was very important to my board was ensuring that all of our mission, our vision, our strategic goals were linked to the SDGs and to Jamaica's Vision 2030. So that kind of guided us in the process, and so the activities that we do are directly measured against those. One of our primary areas is education, and we focus on SDG 4, quality education. And our focus is on university students. We offer a lot of scholarships for university students. And coming out of that, we recognized that we needed to do even more than just provide scholarships. So we created a program called the GK Campus Connect program, where we could actually expose the students to seminars, to just help them to be ready for the working world. We provide them with internships, and hopefully many of them get employment with Grace Kennedy when they graduate. But aligned with that, we realized when COVID-19 hit, our scholars, one of the requirements of being on our program is volunteerism and giving back. You have to do a certain amount of hours. And one of our students actually came up with a program called Ace with Grace, where our scholars provide tutoring services for students on our Grace and Staff homework program, as well as our employees' children. And that has been fantastic. It has been wonderful for the students who are tutoring and also for the beneficiaries. So our main beneficiaries for the scholarship program are obviously our university students, and our scholarships are actually merit-based, so academically you have to be strong to qualify. But what's been interesting is to see how, I would say 99% of our students in our program would not be able to go to university if they did not get our scholarship. They're coming from all walks of life, very challenging circumstances that it's hard to describe, and so that's who we focus on. And we know when we affect the life of that student, we know that when one student gets a university degree, their earning power increases dramatically, and also it has a great impact on their family as well. So indirectly, we are also making changes for their families when they receive the scholarship. So our annual lecture in 2020, we decided that we wanted to focus on the SDGs. And this person that we selected has to be Jamaican, so we asked Dr. Margaret Jones-Williams, who is based in Suriname and is the Deputy Resident Representative for UNDP, to present on the Decade of Action, Sustainable Development Goals, No One Left Behind, because we really felt it was important, not just for the business community, but everybody in Jamaica to have a good understanding of what the SDGs are all about and why we all need to be committed to it. So coming out of that, what was very encouraging is to see Grace Foods, which is part of my parent company and a very large part of the company, and they're in Canada, in the United States, in the UK, and of course here in Jamaica. They actually came up with goals linked to the SDGs as well. And we worked with them to create those measurements. So we're very excited about the fact that we're seeing it roll down into the company itself, and it's not just a foundation that's focused on it. So another area of focus for the foundation is healthy lifestyles, and that really focuses on SDG 1 and 2, no poverty, zero hunger. And even though we had this great scholarship program, we realized that our scholars actually were facing a lot of hunger, and a lot of university students were facing hunger, and we set up a food bank to help meet those needs. You know, when you hear about a student relying on cough syrup to hold them for the whole day, just to get that sugar in their system. Things are really bad. One of our beneficiaries shared that they're so happy that they have more food now because they no longer have to stretch a tin of mackerel for days with their family. So it's really bad, and so we wanted to address that need, and we set up the food bank, and that's been going well. And once COVID hit, there were a bunch of university students, international students that were stuck on hall. We were able to provide food for them. When we had an outbreak of COVID on one of their halls, we were again able to mobilize food for them immediately, because that was a really big issue. They weren't getting meals consistently. So that's another area where we've really been trying to do our part to address that need. So SDG 13, 14, and 17 are critical for our environmental focus that we have. Life below water, life above water, and of course partnerships. The foundation has invested in environmental issues for over 29 years. We've been funding a chair at the University of the West Indies. Professor Mona Weber is actually the chair right now, and she does a lot of work around the mangroves, restoring them, and of course focuses a lot on the Kingston Harbour. Coming out of that, we actually have been embarking on a number of projects linked to the Kingston Harbour, because we want to see the harbour clean. We know it has an impact on flooding if we don't protect the mangroves around the harbour. We want to get the communities involved, and so that's a big, big priority for us. In addition to that, we have a robust recycling program for our staff members. So not only are we focused on the harbour and the communities and engaging the business communities about the importance of climate change and protecting our harbour, we also are doing a lot of training with our staff members as well and getting them involved. Grace Kennedy was the largest corporate collector at International Coastal Cleanup Day in 2018 and 2019, because it's a big priority to get our staff out, to get schools out, to let people be aware of the importance of protecting our environment and the part that each of us play in doing that. So I also want to mention the work of the network of corporate foundations. I chair that committee under CVSS. It's a subcommittee under the CVSS, and it's very exciting to see how the foundations, and remember it's corporate foundations, so we're technically competitors, how we've come together to support various initiatives. Again, when COVID hit and the PSOJ asked various companies to support their COVID relief fund, one of the challenges they gave us was to raise $30 million for this initiative, and we met that goal. The foundations came together. Not only did they come together to give money, they gave in kind. And it was very encouraging to see foundations like JMMB, the CBA Foundation, getting their staff out to pack goods, to distribute to various communities. Very encouraging to see National Bakery donating, I think, $15 million worth of snacks to that initiative. And then, as we have progressed, to see the ISA Foundation donate a 40-foot container of masks and other PPEs. You know, it really comes through a WhatsApp group. The issues are raised in a WhatsApp group, and we jump on it and we make sure the needs are met. So I really want to big up the network, and again, that focuses on SDG 17, the issue of partnerships and the importance of partnerships to ensure that SDGs are achieved. Other foundations like the Spanish Jamaica Foundation did, I think, a $2 million donation towards PPEs for the country. The Sandals Foundation recognized that there was a big need for the SAV Hospital and for the Black River Hospital, and just the other day they donated $2 million worth of items for those hospitals. Foundations are really trying to make a difference and work together to ensure that SDGs are achieved. So what I would like to see by 2030 is obviously no one left behind, right? That's really ultimately our goal at the end of the day. For me personally, my passion is environmental issues, and I would love to see the Kingston Harbour clean. I would love us to figure out how to stop dumping our garbage into the gullies and polluting the harbour. I'd love to see people swimming there, fishing, and it's just healthy to be there as a people. So that's a big thing for me personally. Another area that I think would be important is to see business communities really get focused on the SDGs. I think we are critical, just as I mentioned about the role of foundations, corporate foundations. I think we play a critical role in educating the population about the SDGs and also setting the pace in going after those goals.
Absolutely beautiful. You know, sometimes we see these foundations or we see these corporate entities in the news, you know, you see photos, you see captions, but sometimes we really don't get the true understanding of just how much work they do. I mean, I just kept on hearing Caroline pick off the different SDGs. I thought maybe she should cover maybe one or three, but hearing her go down and realizing the impact of so many SDGs that she deliberately counts within the foundation that trickled down into the corporate entity, it really makes you say that yes, there's hope. There's hope for us all. Caroline, congratulations, job well done. How are you? Welcome. Is Caroline with us? I hope she is. Fingers crossed.
Hi, I'm here.
Okay, fantastic. I can hear you. Oh my goodness. Let me tell you something. I went to Cuba and studied veterinary medicine there, and I never board a plane every single year without my Grace team.
That's right.
I mean, clearly we had problems with the airlines because I was always overweight, but you know, they always felt sorry for us as students. So I want to thank Grace for really keeping me fed for the 6 years that I was there. You know, I listened to you speak about the impact and the trickle-down effect, and it's a huge difference when the culture of an organization or corporate entity becomes the idea, right? You don't feel as if you're forcing it down. But I think the thing that resonated with me most is when you spoke about teaming up, joining forces, and uniting with your competitors. And that is something that we don't always speak about. We hear about aligning with the right partners, sure. But it wasn't until we even had Dr. Dana Morris Dixon, who was our keynote speaker, who said even Jamaica National had teamed up with Victoria Mutual because they had a common goal. Talk to us more about that space and having to navigate what that looks like. Is it as difficult as some people think it is, or is it the approach?
I think it's different. I think, first of all, when we head foundations, our thinking is very different. We're really focused on meeting needs, and so we kind of are not in that competitive mode. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's been great to see us all work together. And I mean, I remember close to meeting that $30 million goal. I think we were short by like 300,000, and Muslims came on board and said, "We will donate rice. Don't worry, we'll get enough donates to get to the point." You know, it was great to see our competitors working together. And I think because we meet together quarterly, we're sharing, we're trying to help each other to be their best. So it's not about my foundation shining and being the only one that's successful. It's about how can we strengthen the sector to have the greatest impact. We just recognize we've gone beyond the issue of competitiveness to just be able to support our country as best as possible.
Right, you're looking at the bigger picture and what it is needed, and what is the common goal, and I absolutely appreciate it. Something else that you said that resonated with me was the fact that it was able to trickle down, where the company itself and the employees are all now thinking about the SDGs and how they have their own individual responsibility and impact. Just for persons who might be watching, whether they're part of the public sector or private sector, how can they learn to make it become a part of the culture of a company, not just foundation or NGOs, but everyone?
All right, well, a couple of things. One, I don't think that our companies realize how many of the SDGs they're actually implementing already, right? But they're just not measuring it.
Yes.
So I think it's just to decide what areas you want to focus on specifically. I don't think we should get overwhelmed and try and accomplish all of them, but to really think through your core business and what SDGs you can contribute to and make a difference. We're very specific about the areas that we focus on. I know for Grace Foods, they focus on 6 SDGs only, but they've created very specific goals around what they want to accomplish over the next 5 years and over the next 10 years. So I think it's not getting overwhelmed and recognizing that we are actually doing a lot. And now we just need to try and get this measured and highlight the importance of focusing on it.
Right, and being absolutely deliberate. Listen, Caroline Mahfood, CEO, GK Foundation, thank you so very much. And thank you for being a UN partner. We truly appreciate the work that you do. And as a citizen, I mean, Grace has been a part of our DNA, a lot of us, in terms of the DNA, and it's always good to see a company always thinking about the persons and the citizens and the communities and helping to make positive impact. So love from all of us here. Thank you so very much for your work.
Thank you.
No problem. Oh, that was so fantastic. We're looking at how to leverage the unique roles of various actors in Jamaica to drive SDG implementation. That is actually what the second session is all about. So you just saw those video presentations that gave you a very good idea of how companies are leveraging their platforms, their reach, their resources to actually apply or to achieve SDGs within their spaces. And so now we're going to go into our very first panel discussion for this afternoon, and it's entitled, Let's Talk Business, Why Human Rights and Gender Equality is Good for Business. A lot of us may not necessarily think so, so we thought that this would be a fantastic topic. The facilitator is Mrs. Tony Ann Brodva, Representative, UN, Women Multi-Country Office, Caribbean. She will take it from here. Welcome.
Thank you so much, and a very warm welcome, and thank you to the panelists who are still with us this afternoon. It's been an incredible journey thus far.
It has.
Given that we're running a little bit late, I'm just going to jump in. As many people are aware, we've been discussing the Sustainable Development Goals and the way in which the United Nations is collaborating. All of the agencies are collaborating with private sector, with civil society and governments, and of course the government of Jamaica, to make sure that we build back not just better from any kind of hazard such as COVID-19, but equal. So the panel is, Let's Talk Business, Why Human Rights and Gender Equality is Good for Business. We have a fantastic panel this morning. With us already online, I see that we have Ms. Melanie Subrati, the Deputy Chairman of Masan Limited, Jamaica Limited, as well as the Chairman and CEO of Stanley Motor. We also have with us online Augustina Perez, the Business and Human Rights Consultant with the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights in Geneva. We should also have with us online, hopefully they're still with us, Ms. Valerie Vieira, the Chief Executive Officer of the Jamaica Business Development Corporation, as well as Mr. Leo Williams, the Managing Director of CEEF Latin America and the Caribbean. Good afternoon, all of the esteemed and incredibly accomplished panelists.
I'm here, Valerie.
Fantastic. Wonderful. So one of the things that we wanted to be able to discuss today is to get into the nitty-gritty of why human rights and gender equality mean good business. Now, we know the data is quite clear. There's many studies that suggest that firms with more women in top-level executive positions seem to outperform those without. We have seen that there are human rights indicators that also demonstrate that institutions that follow human rights frameworks are those in which employees prosper. But now, what I'd like to find out from all of you is really what experience highlighted the importance of gender, business, and human rights in particular for you. So if we could start first with Ms. Valerie Vieira, that would be wonderful.
Very well, and I'm so excited about all that I heard before and talking about partnerships. And I thought that this power of partnership is such a strong theme and so relevant to this theme of human rights, gender and prosperity, because we're talking about balance. We're talking about honesty, we're talking about respect and contributing to an objective, to a cause, to a company based on your best capability and possibilities. And if we say that, we have removed this concept of male versus female, because we're talking about how you can contribute and where you can. And in our experience at JBDC, what we have clearly stated is that business has no gender. A business is either viable or it's not viable. It's not viable because it's male-led or female-led. It's because the concept is viable and the model is viable. And that's what we have been preaching. And it has taken on. And what we found when we started 20 years ago is that we had a woman who had great equity in the business, but they were assigned tasks like being the secretary to the company. And that did not mean the secretary to the company. It meant taking notes at the meeting. And you're assigned, what they think are the soft things, HR and administration. When in fact, your intellectual property is what's driving the business. And so we have over these 20 years worked to make a woman understand that they are equal partners in businesses where they have any equity as an investment, And we have seen that come forward, and our women are taking their place. Let me tell you, we are proud to say that we have 48 female clients, and as we go up the different tiers, starting at the lower up, we find that more and more women are taking charge and starting businesses, formalizing them, and in fact making a lot of effort in making sure their business model is strong. So partnership means balance, does not mean that there is one strong male and a weak woman. Certainly, as we have seen in the presentations today, some of us are strong and we can make our contribution without any apology. So it's a balance. We're not fighting, we're not trying to be the one, we're saying we are one of two. And that is what we said, and that's what working for us in JBDC. In terms of business.
Thank you so much for that. I think you're really underscoring that point about equality and equal opportunities. Regardless of your sex, there should be equal opportunities for women and men in order to ensure that no one is left behind. So the same question to you, Ms. Subrati, with regards to what really brought this to the fore for you? What experience highlighted the importance of gender, business, and human rights?
Well, firstly, I'm a mother of 3 girls, so I feel I have to fight to make sure that, for them and their friends and also the people growing up with them, there's good opportunities for them in the future. But I mean, I've been lucky, I'm part of a family business, but it does not mean that you end up sometimes being the only female in the room, or you end up in big meetings where everyone is looking for you to pour a cup of tea. And these things happen, and I see it happening to other women in rooms with me in a business scenario where, perhaps they're better qualified than some of the men sitting in the room, but they don't get to use their voice in the same way. And so having witnessed that in a variety of different areas, it has been something where I try not to sound like the angry woman in the room, but, sticking up for other females and actually other men too, because I have seen situations where I've seen women get chances to go pick up their children from school at lunchtime and men not get the equal opportunity to do that. So it definitely goes both ways. The other thing is one of our businesses did accept investments from a multilateral entity about 8 or 9 years ago. And so we had to do an entire audit of all of the companies in terms of this specific area, gender, human rights, gender equality, and male, female, and all the rest. So we did a lot of work. And so when the UN Gender Seal of Approval started getting promoted here in Jamaica, I was definitely an advocate to get as many women as possible on, there. and to get as many companies through the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce jumping on that seal of approval. It didn't have as many people as I think we hoped, but I hope that program can maybe continue. So there's a whole variety of reasons, and I get reminded every day of the importance of this, and there's not one day that doesn't go by where I don't see something in this area that means that someone is being treated lesser than or better than someone else on account of things that do not relate to their capacity to work, their intelligence, or even their expertise. And that's not a reflection of my company, it's just a reflection of being in business generally. And you see it all the time, and this is something we have to put right.
Thank you for that, absolutely. And this is part of the partnership. So our colleagues at UNDP have established that gender seal, and the UN Compact and UN Women has also collaborated on the Women's Empowerment Principles, and we are very excited to see Ms. Heidi Clark as well as a few others, because the Sandals Foundation was one of the first signatories to these 7 principles to create that enabling environment you're referencing with regards to addressing some of the inequalities that both women and men face when it comes to unpaid care work, for example. Mr. Williams, what about you? What experience highlighted the importance of gender, business, and human rights for you?
Well, good morning, good evening. It's good to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I'm particularly pleased to be on this panel because I run a fund that invests in companies across the Caribbean region with the interest of impact as one of the underscoring themes, and looking for impact. One of our first investments that we made we began in October of 2019, but we made in September of 2020, was a company in Guyana that has about 350 employees, and about 85% of them are women. And so this is an astounding figure. We went in there with the intention that we were going to drive gender equality and gender equity. And when we ran the numbers, we said, wait a minute, this is a company that is already there. At the helm of the company, it was founded by a man, and the board has participation by women, more than 50%. And we're looking to drive the influence of the company throughout the market. It's a consumer food retail product company, but by definition, it's going to be reaching out to the society, of which 50% are women. And so if you want to be able to reach that market in any business, regardless of what your product is, your service, one of the first tenets of business is to be respectful of the consumer. And the consumer feels respected. When they do, they participate more wholeheartedly in the product and the services. So for us, it's not only good business, but it makes sense thematically, given that the workers are themselves women. But when you look further and you say, how does a business reach the segment that it wants to reach, you find that households in general tend to be driven by the influencers who are women and the decision makers. And so if you really want to reach that segment of the market that punches above its weight, you want to be able to reach the women as well. So no matter how you look at it, it makes good sense, it makes good logic, it makes good business for us to be concerned. I am a member of a household where I have a wife and 2 daughters, no sons. And so I'm surrounded by the concept of woman power. I eat, sleep, and live it. And so it's really interesting and that we begin to reflect it. And then recently I saw an article where it was described that the country in the world with the highest percentage of women managers is Jamaica, where I live and work. And we see it as not only Jamaica being leadership status in this regard, but when we look at the university and we look at different curricula, whether it's medicine or law. We see that women comprise more than 50, 60, 70, up to 80% of the classes. So it is the future. It's not just where we are. It's not just what we recognize at home. It's what is in business, and it's going to be the future, the near future of our society. So we need to really make the adjustments of being gender neutral in all aspects of our life. And then maybe perhaps looking to build equity by bringing the boys and the young men along in some of these educational realms where they seem to be underperforming as well.
Absolutely. I think the numbers and the data is demonstrating to us the numbers matter. Having women on boards, having women in employment matters. Also, what the data is telling us is that this is not necessarily always translating into gender-responsive policies. So Jamaica is a leader in so many things. As they say, liquor but talawa, right? I saw yesterday Jamaica has the 5th highest number of women. It is 5th in the world in terms of women investors. And so these are very important and important things that we need to be able to celebrate, while acknowledging that there's some gaps that still need to be addressed with regards to the fact that in spite of women really getting that certification, when we look at the employment numbers, women are not seeing that return on investment for certification in business. And when we look at the percentages of women-owned businesses in the Caribbean, we're looking at a tiny percentage of the total owned businesses, and most of them are managers of one themselves. So how can we take these numbers and lead them into action, as you said as well, Ms. Williams, that leaves no one behind? Interestingly, most of the panelists have daughters. I have 2 sons. I am fingers crossed maybe one day I will have a daughter to see if I can support in that way. But I want to ask our colleagues at UNOHCHR. In 2011, there were guiding principles on business and human rights that really provided a framework of how and why businesses should and can uphold the principles of human rights as a matter of corporate responsibility. And in adherence to the domestic and international laws and commitments, can you tell us a bit about OHCHR's guiding principles on business and human rights and what the importance of these principles are today?
Yes, and thank you, Tony, for introducing me, and thank you to all the organizers, to our colleagues in Jamaica, for the invitation to this forum. I'm very pleased to see that gender is one of the key points that we are highlighting today. And before I go to the guidance, let me maybe say very shortly that I'm here today, and I think we are all here today speaking from our role, from our professional role, but we are also speaking from a privileged position. And a privileged position, I understand that special or special advantages that we all here enjoy due to certain circumstances that are not necessarily that were just given to us. So we do have the responsibility to do something, to act, and to do something with that privileged position that we have in society. And maybe that involves not being necessarily gender neutral, as we are going to see with this guiding principles, with the gender lens of guiding principles on business and human rights, but particularly gender-oriented or gender-sensitive, because we need concrete and special measures to make change happen. In order to have more women in leadership positions, in order to have gender equality, in order to be redistributed more equally, the taking care of children, etc., needs concrete action. So we know that women, we've just said that women experience business-related human rights abuses in a unique way, and often in a very disproportionately way as well. So we know that we face discriminations, we face additional barriers to access to justice, and that's why the UN Working Group on Business and Human Rights 2 years ago in 2019 developed or published a thematic report that unpacks the gender dimension of the UNGBs and provides practical recommendations for what it means, this protect, respect, and remedy framework of the UNGBs, what it means for the rights of women in the business context. So, of course, we can't go into much detail in 2 minutes, but a long story short, this guidance offers gender lens or a gender translation to each of the UN guiding principles, and also offers like a more broader general framework for the guiding principles made of 3 steps that are targeting both governments and businesses, or things that governments and businesses should consider. The first one is gender responsive assessment. The second one is gender transformative measures, and the third one is gender transformative remedies. But what does this mean in practice? So a gender responsive assessment means, for example, that governments should review whether the laws, the policies, the norms, the standards, the practices are directly or indirectly discriminating women, and so have to do businesses with their own policies, with their own way of working, with their own way of producing goods and services. The second thing that all of us should do is to consider gender transformative measures, and this could involve, for example, making a public commitment to achieve gender equality, but also practicing rights-based empowerment for women. And finally, gender transformative measures involve, for example, offering a range of preventive, reversive, and deterrent remedies, because all women face different and understand differently what remedy means. So there is no one size fits all. This guidance is just an example. So we pretend or we expect to give you some ideas in order for businesses and for government to provide and to change and to make this concrete, to take these special measures, to change, to act now, and to make gender equality a reality. So you can download the document online. I think there's a colleague of mine that is sharing the link in the YouTube. So,
thank you so much for that. This is really about how do we get from talk to action, and how can we make gender responsive policies a reality, such as things like parental leave. So thank you so much for sharing that. My other question has to do with the fact that we're now in the age of social media, and we've really seen that some global companies have been criticized for joining social trends around brand equity, but without standing behind the public statements they've made. Could you share with us some examples of what companies can do to promote gender equality and human rights in their business? And Ms. Perez, if you can just share 1 or 2 concrete examples, and then I'll ask Ms. Vieira to also share some examples as well.
Sure. Well, I think that more than examples, I think the most important thing is to never stop asking ourselves important questions. And this involves making those questions to women and trying to identify where is it that the company can make the greatest contribution, and where is the aspect that the company can impact more negatively, both inside the company with its own employees and outside the company with consumers and with the community. So, for example, if we consider internal issues, are we treating our employees equally? And by equally, I don't mean in exactly, equally, because that's not going to change anything. We need to consider the differentiated needs. We need to consider, as I said, these special measures. So we tend to talk, for example, about maternity leave, parental leave, pay gap, and this is, of course, important. But, for example, there are other practices that if we want to, really change the business culture, we really need to, start thinking differently. So, for example, on business trips, we're allowing our workers to use a credit card or the daily allowance for a nice hotel, for a dinner out, but we're not, allowing it to pay for a person that can take care of a newborn while the mother or the father goes to business trip or an important dinner. So what can we do about it? Or, for example, are we asking, there was a case in Mexico where women were dropping, were quitting their jobs. So the company got concerned, what is it? What's happening? And it happened that women felt very insecure and walking from the bus station to the way in which the business operated. So when they asked women why, they said, the factory is like very far away, we're scared, so the company put their own buses to go like from one point to another, from the company to the bus stop, put some light on the bus stop, and then dramatically change the percentage of resignations. It decreased considerably. If we're talking about what companies can do outside, I think it's important, for example, to consider what are the impacts that we're having on our consumers, or what are the impacts that the business is having in the community where it operates. So, for example, let's say we work on extractive industries or agriculture, then we know that a very important issue to consider is the ownership of the land, to consider like who is producing what in the land and for what, and like where is the role of women in that community. So like companies should be speaking more and talking more with different stakeholders, but particularly with engaging in meaningful with women to understand like how are they impacting them. And lastly, I would like to mention that there is also like a level that we could talk or we could engage in collective action. And this year in Colombia, in the context of the Responsible Business Conduct in Latin America project that we have OHCSR together with OECD and ILO with support of the European Union, we launched the first multi-stakeholder thematic group on gender, business, and human rights, the country and the region. And the goal of this group is to close the gender gap in the context of business operations. So we meet on a monthly basis to discuss together with government, businesses, academia, labor unions, trade unions, how we can advance together gender, business, and human rights agenda, and we interpolate each other and we criticize in a good way each other from our own standpoints to do better and to protect and respect women's rights. So if you want to learn more about this group, you can contact me or you can write to rbclac at un.org for more information. We would love to share more about this as well.
Thank you so much for that. Yes, keeping each other and holding each other accountable. Ms. Vieira, any examples that you have as well of this?
I have three main keys. One is that we need, as governments and as organizations, because it operates at all levels, to ensure that the ecosystem is supporting the contribution, the participation of both genders in their operations. For instance, we have daycare at JBDC. Our fathers utilize it just as much as the women because we have not put agenda to say it's for the women to bring their children. It's for the parents to utilize the service. So the ecosystem needs to be more nourishing and supportive of the needs of both sexes. Another thing there's something that is really on my head, why we always have to be having John Brown and his sons. Most of the women that have come on have daughters. We're talking about sustainability. These contexts print things on people's minds. It don't have to be John Brown and sons. Can it not be John Brown and daughters that carry the business forward? We never think sometimes deeper the impact that has on the psyche of people as they operate business, and we're talking about sustainability. And in terms of even how we promote our brand as businesses, as organizations, I really am still at a loss why in this century we still have dress women, presenting products. No relationship to the product either, but it must be a half-dressed woman. And looking as if she's also half intelligent. And if we take it as our responsibility to be more conscious of these things, then we're going to see some changes. But we as women also must not allow ourselves to be used in this way. We have to train our daughters that they are an important part of the balancing act and not accept the kind of treatment that we are talking about. It's not cute to be used in that way. We need to put these things into practice because while we talk about the other things that we don't see a lot, and that's important, equal pay for equal work, we need equal treatment in the public sphere as well for our women and our girls. We need to make an impact on the mind, because the mind controls everything. We need to work more on the mind. Not only the pocket, that's important as well. I like my money. But I also would like us to start thinking in a different way. You know, how we present our businesses, how we present our brand, and talking about the development of balance in our society.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. I think looking at the issues of the sexual objectification of women, and looking at the fact that yes, women have agency, and we also need to work to create enabling environments where they can practice this agency easily. And that will assist us in becoming much more innovative and creative in the ways in which we even promote and project products and businesses. Also looking at those social norms and perceptions about, really, it's who should and can be a leader when you're talking about John Brown and Sons rather than and daughter. Changing those behavioral norms so that we can get there is extremely important. And the fact that you spoke to the ecosystem already really ties directly into one of what the UN as a system is working with governments and all partners across private sectors on, in terms of one of our key outcomes, which is looking at a more productive and competitive business ecosystem designed to improve people's standards of living. And if there's one thing I think the COVID-19 pandemic has taught us, is that the unpaid care work sector, the work that parents are doing, and often, unfortunately, the data that exists globally, we don't have enough time, use surveys in the Caribbean to see exactly how much time women and men are spending on caring for children, caring for the elderly. When we have that data, we'll be able to see really how much unpaid work goes into our GDP. And we know that, unfortunately, a lot of these behaviors and perceptions you're speaking about, Ms. Vieira, mean that a lot of times women end up carrying the bulk of the labor when it comes to unpaid care work. This makes progressing gender equality a difficult task, because if you're thinking of, I need to make a choice between caring for my family and going to work, for many people it is a difficult choice because they may love their work, but it is also not a difficult choice for them. It is clear, because they feel their responsibilities with their families are ones that they have to prioritize. At Standing Moto, I want to find out what is really happening in terms of some of the experiences that have happened around promoting gender equality within the organization. It's clear that there has been an understanding, given the multilateral partnerships in the past, Ms. Subrati, of the importance of gender responsiveness. Can you share some of the examples that demonstrated barriers that you've seen women facing and that you yourself may have faced, and men facing as well, and how you've been able to overcome them? And Ms. Vieira, I would also be interested in hearing your thoughts on this as well, given your multiple years of experience in the business world.
Thank you for that question. I mean, at Standing Motor, it is a property company that had an IPO 5 years ago. While more women have been in CEO roles, male domination at the board level is still fully entrenched. And I think that confirms that the glass ceiling really hasn't been shattered. And amidst those same challenges that you're talking about, and oftentimes failure of a work-life balance, most of the women leaders are actually sponsored by men who see beyond gender and then select the right person for the job. One of the things that we did at Standing Motor, and I think it goes to what Valerie was saying, about showing something in the public domain, is that we selected an 100% female board. And I don't know if there is a board in North America, a publicly listed one, or in Europe. But when I got the chance to do an IPO, and I had to look for independent board directors, I was like super excited to pick people that I had just met over the course of my work life here in Jamaica. And I wanted to work with them. People like Minna Israel, Patricia Sutherland, Sandra Glasgow, just amazing people. So most of these people just happen to be female. Mm-hmm. So then I said, well, what happens if I don't have to have men on my board? Then I can maybe make an impactful statement at the same time. So I have, and I was going to say, I have 6 wonderful ladies on my board, but no, that's not true. I have 6 powerful, effective, and strong women on my board. My only regret is that I didn't increase the general population of women directors as a whole in Jamaica. I was doing an IPO, and I had to make sure that everyone knew that this was not a gimmick, that these women had proven themselves in the field before, and that's what's completely unfair, because if I picked a mixed board, I wouldn't have had to have vouched for the women in the same way. And most of these directors were already directors of public companies, so I wish I could have pulled more people into that pool of female directors of public company. I've had a lot of stick for appointing an all-female board. I get teased when I go to meetings, and someone will say something along the lines of, oh, can I be the token male on your board? To which sometimes I respond, well, does that mean the single female on your board is a token? Because I don't believe, can I be the token man? Well, is that how you perceive gender on a board? Is that a conversation that we should all be giggling about? So it did concern me that it wouldn't be taken seriously, but that has not been the case. The company is profitable. Every woman on that board is a success in their own right, and they bring knowledge in banking, finance, operations, IT, law, entrepreneurship, and corporate governance. So I am flummoxed to how persons always need to ensure that women are qualified or fit certain criteria before appointing them. And when appointing men, they literally just say, we are appointing this person. They don't say, we are appointing X person and this is why we can appoint them. But I would also like to mention that the previous board were male, apart from me. So I did have to ask those men to step back, and they did. And so I feel like what you can do and the barriers is that, there does need to be male advocates for women. And women do need to address, and men need to listen to what are really the things that they can do to make it easier for females to speak up at a board level. Mm-hmm. What is it? I sit on a board that is chaired by Don Webby. And every single board meeting, he always asks every single female in the room, what is their opinion, and make sure that they have spoken. I would big up someone like Stephen Price at Flow, because he steps forward time and time again on gender equality. I'm first vice president of the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce, and when we went to present our comments on the sexual harassment bill at Parliament, everyone looked at me to go and make the presentation, because I had made these presentations before on other bills. And I refused. I said I will not go unless men come and make the presentation and advocate why it is that the sexual harassment bill must become law. And so, because the directors of the Chamber of Commerce and the executive are extremely open to these ideas, and to making sure that they're advocates as well, I think that is really, really important. And I feel like sometimes, we need male advocates for women. We need women to be able to explain to men what makes them feel uncomfortable. And, perhaps also we need persons from the LGBTQ community to explain to those of us who do not understand what helps them, what exactly it is that they need, or explain to me the language that I need to use to ensure that I respect your boundaries. But because this is really about education too, and it's just about opening yourself up to having someone say, okay, it would help me if you did this during a board meeting. It would help me if you did this when I'm trying to speak. And after that, I'm not going to say anything more because I don't want to overtake the time.
No, I mean, I think everything that you've said has been so incredibly impactful. I'm happy to say that Flo is also a wet signatory and demonstrative consistently, and the surprise is always demonstrative of the fact that gender equality is critical for business, good business. Taking all of your points as well, and I think this is close to what Ms. Vieira said earlier, it's not tit for tat. We need to look at where we can find allies and advocates amongst men, and we need to also be looking at all of the groups that are marginalized and why they've been marginalized and how we can ensure that our countries and our companies are benefiting from their engagement. This is really important because it's not about taking space, it's about making space. There's enough space for us to all really contribute. I have to move along because I'm getting some pressure from the organizers. I want to ask Mr. Williams, as a ally, as an advocate for gender equality, the last question. Although we see that women are leading in terms of graduates in tertiary institutions, as we discussed, they're not very engaged in some fields, and we know those fields. We know those fields often as the growth sectors, the ICT space, and even the finance space. So we're not seeing a lot of women as fund managers or in venture capital and private equity. So what do you think can be done? And this is not only about women, it is definitely about women. It is also about persons from lower socioeconomic classes. So what do you think can be done to support more diversity in this space?
In the space of equity, private equity and venture capital in particular, there is a lot of opportunity for women to exert their influence at the top. I was, a fun fact that I just realized sitting on this panel is my entire working life in Jamaica, I've worked for women. Whether it was back in the 80s when I came back and worked for the OAS, Sheila Graham, or when I joined JMB, I was working for Donna Duncan Scott, and she transitioned to her brother, Keith Duncan. When I was at the Stock Exchange as a director, Rita Humphreys-Lowen was a chairperson, and in finance, of course, and Marlene Street Forrest, executive director. And when I joined this company, SEEF, the founder and CEO is a man, but the last year was just spent with a co-CEO, a woman who was a board member of this very powerful group that's invested $1.4 billion over the last 30 years. And so she is bringing a lot of that sensitivity, a lot of that focus, a lot of that appreciation to a lot of our discussions as an impact private equity firm. So we bring impact to a private equity as part of our theme, our approach, our milieu. And that means gender balance, gender equity is very prominent as one of the top three themes, along with climate resiliency and resiliency in general. But what we can do is we can push and bring and advocate for more partnerships, for more representation, for stronger numbers as well, and then basically represent to the next generation coming up, whether we're speaking at classes or we're speaking at forums such as these, or we're looking to encourage and to mentor to make sure that there is that representation there. It didn't dawn on me until just now that I've been involved in organizations led by women, all along. Even some of my clients, Manpower Maintenance Services, Audrey Hinchcliffe, as one of the clients I had when I was consulting prior to joining SEEF. There are women all around, and women leaders who have pioneered and innovated and created in many of these spheres. Women who have done well. In the private equity space, we have Audrey Richards, who is literally creating the ecosystem under the auspices of DBJ. We have even the lady who recently was with Portland Private Equity and now is with First Global. So there are many women who are contributing at many different levels. But one of the areas that I think we have the best opportunity to have that impact is when we speak at schools. And I recruit for my university. And when I go and I speak, I literally see in front of me women and men. I see young men and young women. I see teachers, I see counselors, I see business people. And so it is important to just constantly reinforce that balance and that perspective that we need all hands on deck. Part of the way in which Jamaica achieves its distinction, whether you think Jamaica looks at being exceptionalist or not, is we bring all of our resources, all of our skills to bear. And so that is the creativity of women, that's creativity of men. It's the influence and the power and the insight and the innovation of all of these people. And so it cannot be that we have talented and trained and respected members of our society sitting idle on the sidelines. We need every hand on deck. And so that's a message that we can carry forward in all the different forums that we participate in and that we should.
Thank you so much, Mr. Williams. Absolutely. All hands on deck, no one left behind. We need equal opportunities. I want to thank the UN in Jamaica for ensuring that we have this partnership forum. I would like to thank each of you on the panel, one, for your patience with the delayed start of the panel and for your incredible insights and contribution to this particular panel. We've been the first, and I think this is going to be a very high and important act to follow. UN Women, the United Nations entity for gender equality and women's empowerment, is proud to be able to be a part of this process and proud to be an agency that supports the government of Jamaica and civil society in Jamaica with and in collaboration with the United Nations colleagues across each agency. We look forward to collaborating with the private sector to build on the EU-supported win-win project, Gender Equality Means Good Business, that was implemented with ILO. We want to thank all of the Jamaican people who know and understand that, as all of you have said, it is important for Jamaica, and I think I'm going to quote again Ms. Clark, to be a country where people want to work, live, and do business. And this is a paraphrasing of Agenda 2030 as well. So thank you so much for your time. I think we need to continue to have these conversations, and even more than the conversation, we need to continue to collaborate in implementing action to ensure that we see gender equality and human rights well reflected in businesses in Jamaica and beyond. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful evening.
Women Multi-Country Office Caribbean. Let me tell you something, that was an absolutely powerful session. And you are right, it's going to be a very hard and tough act to follow. I really did appreciate the honesty, the transparency, the openness with which the panelists spoke, and certainly giving even examples of their own experiences helps to shine a light on other areas. And it doesn't really matter what color we are, how old we are. I think all of us can agree that we have experienced that level of discomfort, just because of our gender. And I certainly hope that these conversations will be continued in various spaces and certainly encouraged in companies so that we can actually see the impact. Again, on behalf of all the women out there, we don't want to be token. We don't want to be given a free pass. We actually want to be put to work, and we just want to be respected for our qualifications. This is just as simple as that. So thank you so very much, Tony Ann, for really facilitating that fantastic session. And the session that dares to follow it is just as important. The topic is integrating the principles of environmental sustainability to support the transition to a healthier, resource-efficient, green and circular economy. The facilitator for this particular session is Mr. Vincent Sweeney, head of the Caribbean Sub-Regional Office, United Nations Environment Program, UNEP. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, and indeed it is a difficult act to follow, especially since according to our schedule I have 3 minutes in which to do it. But I'm going to take some liberties with my panel, and if you will allow, I'm going to try and do what I can to follow up on Tony Ann's excellence.
Thank you for being here. Thank you.
My pleasure. This panel, as has been mentioned, which has a very long name, is going to be trying to discuss a few issues, and we have a very interesting perspective. So I'm very pleased to moderate this panel during this partnership forum, which commemorates 76 years of the UN. The panel discussion will address the important topic of integrating principles of environmental sustainability to support the transition to a healthier, resource-efficient, green and circular economy. And this is intricately linked to our mandate at UN Environment Program, which involves encouraging partnerships in caring for the environment by inspiring, informing, and enabling nations and peoples to improve their quality of life without compromising that of future generations. And as a resident agency, we have a number of partners in Jamaica, naturally, that assist us in working towards our mandate of a healthy and sustainable environment, without whom our work would be impossible. Particularly, we recognize the government of Jamaica, especially, and I'll mention the National Environment and Planning Agency, and of course the University of the West Indies. Others include the Negril Environment Protection Trust and agencies represented in this partnership forum, including some of the panelists. But before we introduce some partners, I'll try and provide a short amount of context. A circular economy, for those who may not be aware, is an inclusive economic model that dissociates economic growth from environmental degradation and resources. And during the 22nd meeting of the Forum of Ministers of the Environment, Latin America and the Caribbean, in February of this year, the Regional Coalition on Circular Economy was announced. This regional coalition aims to create a common regional vision to support the transition to the circular economy with a life cycle thinking approach. At the forum, a ministerial panel on circularity, sustainable economy, and pollution prevention explained that, and I'm going to quote, the shift from an unsustainable consumption and production pattern based on a linear model of extraction, consumption, and disposal towards a circular model is pressing. Inspired by nature-based solutions, circular models keep materials at the highest possible value along the value chain. Appropriate waste management has also been a key component to UNEP's work in the Jamaica context over the years. Projects such as the Jamaica Plastic Waste Minimization Project, also with NEPA, succeeded in its initiatives from the national level to local community outreach. This project supported a ban on single-use plastic bags and disposable drinking straws. And the Raytown Plastic Recycling Project introduced Jamaica's first government-owned plastic-only recycling garbage truck. A plastic waste management virtual conference was also held for policymakers, academia, business representatives, and the general public. Building on these achievements in future projects, such as the soon-to-be-started Regional Caribbean Waste Management Project, can help ensure that this success is lasting and sustainable growth and development is achieved. An environment that prioritizes sustainability brings with it economic and social benefits that are vital for COVID-19 recovery. Partnerships made with the aim to promote and achieve a healthy, green, and circular economy will bring us further towards achieving these sustainable development goals. It's therefore my pleasure to highlight some of these partnerships today, represented by our partner members, whom I will introduce briefly before presenting our first question for discussion. And we have on our panel three esteemed women. I thought it was quite interesting that when we were talking about gender balance, and I looked at my panel, that all of my panel is women. The first is Dr. Susan Otuokan, Executive Director of the Jamaica Conservation and Development Trust. He's an environmental consultant with 30-plus years of experience and in an environmental NGO delegated to manage the Blue and John Crow Mountains National Park. She played a lead role in the 2015 inscription of this park as the UNESCO World Heritage, on the UNESCO World Heritage list. She's been involved in national planning and policy development for protected areas management and tourism. And in 2019, she was awarded the Bronze Musgrave Medal for Distinguished Eminence in Science by the Institute of Jamaica. The second panelist is Christine Clark, Dr. Christine Clark, who holds a PhD in economics and a Bachelor of Arts in Economics and Mathematics. She lectures in economics at UWI Mona, where she is the chair of the graduate committee. Her research areas include public finance, economic development, economics of sport, and resilience. She's published articles on development issues in the Caribbean, as well as 2 books and several book chapters. She has also worked at the Planning Institute of Jamaica as the Director of Economic Planning. And our third panelist is Aisha Constable. Aisha has researched and published on gender and climate change as part of her doctoral studies within the context of climate justice. Her recent academic research has examined the role of young women and girls in climate action in the Caribbean. She has served as a member of several regional and global youth networks, including the Caribbean Youth Environment Network, and is former Caribbean coordinator for the Sustainable Development Solutions Youth Network. She currently serves as a coordinator for the development of the National Adaptation Plan for Antigua and Barbuda. So welcome all panelists, and without further ado, I'm going to get into the question and answer. And I'm going to ask all of you, first of all, if you don't mind, and any of you who wishes to answer first, I'm quite happy for you to take the floor. And the question would be, what would be some of your recommendations to the private sector for integrating principles of environmental sustainability to support the transition to a healthier, greener economy?
I'll be happy to start us off, perhaps. And based on some of my experience working with the private sector, including as a partner, because JCDT has had several, and I noticed one of our major private sector partners in discussions earlier on with the Sandals Foundation. So I think that one of the first things that would really help is to ensure that your staff have a good understanding of what it's about, the environmental system. I've had some good experiences where private sector entities had someone from my office come and share with them before they went out in the field. I find a lot of companies now are calling us and saying, we want to plant trees, but it's not quite so simple. And there might be many other more appropriate ways that your company can be engaged in environmental sustainability. So I think they also need to look at what they can do, what others are doing. I liked hearing earlier on about working with your competitors, looking at what others in your industry are already doing, because there's no need to reinvent the wheel. Somebody else is probably already doing something that would help your company to be more environmentally sustainable. Then you just put your own twist and your branding on it. But I think also the third and final thing that I would suggest to private sector is, whilst you put your own twist and branding on your environmental sustainability activities, look at how you can contribute to something bigger nationally. Because I've noticed, for example, there are a lot of different environmental competitions for schools around, because every company wants to have its own essay for environmental this and that. And I know it's part of the branding, but at the same time, there's a challenge then in having the level of impact that we need to have. It's a little bit distracting, and I think it's a good area that people could collaborate on with a joint approach. Thanks.
Thank you. Dr. Clark, Aisha, would you like to?
Yeah, I'll probably add to that by saying that, We heard some good recommendations, I believe, from Dr. Dana Dixon, who spoke earlier. I think she put forward some tangible recommendations as well. And in addition to what Dr. Tupan has said, I think it's important for, as much as the government needs to create that enabling framework and all the other kind of, legislative maneuvering that needs to happen, private sector entities need to also take the initiative, and the onus is on them in some ways to inform themselves of, what is this space that we're operating in, what are the best practices globally, and how do we tap into the opportunities that is being presented by this crisis. And this crisis, I mean the environmental crisis, the climate crisis. There are some really good examples of companies, even within Jamaica and across the Caribbean, who have been doing just that. I've seen as well, the emergence of some really good green business ideas from young people, especially in response to the ban on single-use plastics more recently. So the idea of, supporting the cause and, planet over profits and good green businesses, good business, integrating all of those into all the relevant entry points in your practices, learning what is happening locally as well in the local environment, and all the work that is being done by the respective government entities to create that framework. And I again go back to climate change because that's kind of my area. There are NAPs, National Adaptation Plans, that are being developed. There are NDCs. What are these, and how do we as entities benefit from all of this? So I would say taking responsibility for their own learning and growing, and finding the entry points in their own entities and business operations to include those, so that they can indeed benefit from the end goal, which is this profit we know, but also doing well by doing good.
Thanks for giving us this entry point to the discussion. What I would add initially is, companies, I think, have a lot of support for the business development issues, the business analytics, the profit-making motive, which we understand to be probably supreme in the initial discussions. But companies often run into trouble when, consumers can't find, how they add value in terms of a societal value. And so one of the dimensions I would suggest is that they think broader, they think bigger. The SDGs have everything to do with government, and in some ways nothing to do with government alone. If you follow development, this is something that has to do with everybody. Companies even think about how they package their products. How does that packaging eventually get disposed of? How is it used? And that goes to the circular economy, that canonical diagram, the repurpose, the reuse, the recycle, those dimensions of important economic activity often overlooked because for whatever reasons, and the legislative and the framework issues were pointed to, and yes, we can maybe point some fingers or two. But I would say that, how do businesses take responsibility even for how they package, how they leave the consumer with waste that either can't be reused or recycled and just ends up, as we know, in Jamaica and in all other states where these items end up. I mean, from academia, I teach 2 courses that are at the master's level research, and you think, oh, it's economics, so it's just theory and models. One of my colleagues always reminds us there are probably 2 theorists in the world. Everybody else is pretty much doing applied work. And my students know, don't submit anything to me that doesn't tell me the answer to the so what question. How does this help, hinder, propel? How is this motivated by the overarching sustainable development goals that we all have to aspire to, whether we want to sign the documents or not? And so I think for businesses, for the private sector, for any entity, they also have to say, well, what are we doing? How does this contribute, or how does this deter the country from being able to achieve it? Because yes, the government can put in the framework, but that's all it will be. It will only be a framework. Everybody else has to kind of put their stitch, their mark, whatever it is that they're contributing to that development landscape, the environment. And we do a lot of work in my department in relation to resilience, sustainability. it is impossible for only one entity to do anything that is sustainable. It has to be partnership-based. And one of the areas I really want to zone in on, because having, in the preparation for this, looking at the Sustainable Development Report for 2020 and 2021, the issue of data, how it is collected, why we don't have so many variables. We don't have any trend data for feeds, Jamaica included. And I know we pride ourselves as being, very good producers of data and being able to report on what is happening. But on the critical elements that we need to look at, critical elements that will propel us, a lot of the gaps there are pointing to two critical issues. One, what we want to achieve, the Jamaica we want to see, the Caribbean, the seeds we want to see, these life-improving changes that we have to do are going to be delayed. Because we don't really, maybe fulsomely, there might be some, entities that have a good idea, but generally, it's hard for the average person who, is unaware to know where are we in this whole agenda, what will it take? And so I think, that is one of the areas, the communication, the data, how can we measure where we are so that these life-improving changes, we know about vulnerability, we understand it very well, but what do we do and how effective is it, how efficient is it, and how sustainable is it going to be? That is the part that we're missing in terms of joining up all these dots so that we can then move to action. And then these gaps, we have to be careful that they don't, in and of themselves, generate structural impediments to develop the very development that we're seeking to achieve. So I think at the company level, at the association level, I know we have the PSOJ here, there's the JMEA, there are all these entities. How will they take this on board? Yes, they can reach out, but also looking inwards, in assessing how it is the things they're doing are contributing or not. Where can they partner? Who can come and speak to them? Can they go to Dr. Otokon? Do they go to Aisha? How do they plug themselves in to the various networks that we're hearing about here? And also reimagine how they will operate going forward. We have, our famous decade to 2030. What changes, what transformative changes can they make to the first step towards achieving the outcomes that we certainly need to experience over the next decade?
Thank you very much, Dr. Clark. I appreciate the efficiency because you've actually answered my second question as well, so I'm going to change the tone just a little bit. I was going to ask a bit about circular economy, but you've already touched on that. And I'm going to ask actually now Dr. Otokon. And the question is that we've seen an increase in ecosystem-based management efforts in the Caribbean, but how important is this ecosystem-based management in our efforts to secure livelihoods and transition to this green and circular economy that we're talking about? Dr. Otokon?
Yes, I think that in the Caribbean, we've probably always had this ecosystem-based management approach. We don't tend to be species-focused, partly because we just don't have the knowledge and information. We don't have enough scientists who can study every single bird and every single fish. So we've tended to take an approach that looks at the coral reef, the coastal ecosystems, terrestrial ecosystems, forests, and so on. And I think we also, maybe have not had the resources. But this, I think, has put us in good stead because the scientists now realize that really that's the approach that should have been taken in the first place, because one species doesn't just function on its own. There's the whole interrelatedness of species, including Homo sapiens. So people ourselves, how do we integrate, how do we relate? And that's what you're talking about with the circular economy. That's how Earth functions, where there's a cycle. Everything in life is all about a cycle. And the economists have their cycles, the management people have their cycles, and so on. So it's critical for us to have that approach. My particular area has been in protected area management, and pretty much everyone who is working to manage and conserve these very special areas that are high in biological diversity and very significant with respect to the ecosystem services that they provide, whether water, climate change mitigation, increasing resilience to disaster, food production, etc. These special places are taken care of not just from the perspective of the plants and animals, but I think if you visit any protected area, they are involved in sustainable livelihoods. We heard earlier on from NECT, and how they're working with farmers, because you simply have to. It was said earlier on, you have to work with people. It's one of the first lessons in the ecology courses that I did. I remember Dr. Peter Bacon, may he rest in peace. He said to us, we are learning about, mangrove conservation, but really it's about people and how people use the mangroves and how you try to get them to use the resources in a more sustainable way, so that their children and their children's children will also be able to benefit from the resources. So I think that's the importance of ecosystem-based management. Is not just about the plants and animals component, but the human component and how we are using the resources within the ecosystem, how we can use them more sustainably, and how we can integrate so that JCDT, for example, does a lot of work with sustainable tourism, but that's also linked to sustainable agriculture, because you can't have recreation and tourism without people eating. They need at least some refreshment or a good meal, and one of the things that they, especially nowadays, the newer market is asking, is this organically produced fruit and vegetables and so on. They want to know, they want to visit the farm, they want to help on the farm. And so we have to work with our farmers, with our community members to identify new and innovative ways in which they can make a living. And we're also realizing that we have to do more mentoring. A lot of organizations have done a lot of training, a lot of projects, and as was said earlier on in the day, a lot of money has been spent, but how much impact? And I think that one of the things the research and the various case studies is showing is that there is a need for hand-holding and mentoring to take people from the knowledge to the practice. Because very often after the project is finished, people go back to the same practices because there's a need to institutionalize what they have learned and to help them to actually be able to implement. So I think that that's really the way that the ecosystem-based management we have seen in Jamaica is functioning to help take us to that circular economy.
Thank you very much, Susan. And you've led us nicely into a discussion where, considering ecosystem issues and how they affect different sectors. But I'm wondering now if I could ask Ms. Constable her views on how does gender parity in decision-making processes for various sectors, such as, let's say, fishing and forestry, for example, enhance how we approach these environmental issues that might be affecting these sectors. Is there something that we should know? Over to you.
I should probably issue a disclaimer to say that I'm completely biased on this topic. In my line of work and my own personal, thinking on the issues, that gender parity is center and forefront to treating with any of these issues, ensuring inclusivity, ensuring equity is the center of gleaning any success in any of the efforts that we are now embarking on, particularly in the sectors that you highlighted, fishing and farming. They're generally characterized by a proliferation of women in different roles in those sectors. However, as with farming, for example, the roles that women play are usually undocumented roles, so to speak. So in the case of Jamaica, for instance, we have a lot of women who are really the backbone of that sector. They're small farmers, but they're not necessarily considered landholders. They don't hold the titles to the land, and they support the sector primarily through buying and selling of this produce, the reaping of the crop, the sowing of the crop, the cleaning of vegetables, that kind of thing. And so, in any effort to ensure that we address some of the root causes of the disparity in the sector and some of the major challenges that are excluding women's access to credit, access to opportunities as legitimate farmers in the sector, we need to address those systemic barriers that are barring women from holding land, are barring women from accessing credit. Similarly with fishing, fishing has similar challenges, but also challenges more related to the norms and the stereotypes of that sector. So it's largely considered the domain of men. And so, there are, again, very distinct roles and dynamics divided across genders in fishing. But my I guess, end all and be all thought is that regardless of what role men and women play in the sector, the important thing is to ensure that structurally and systematically we put in place the measures to ensure equity in access and an opportunity and benefits as well to any interventions that we stage from the level of government or international development partners or whoever it may be. And if I may go back to the question that you asked previously, to highlight as well that in terms of ecosystem-based adaptation, we are seeing a greater understanding, for want of a better term, among the different stakeholders of the significance of that mode of operating. Initially, people would somewhat see it as reverting to more rudimentary ideas and backing away from the more advanced approaches to adaptation and planning in the sector. But we're realizing that a lot of the success that we would have gleaned, particularly again in sectors such as agriculture and fisheries, are based on indigenous ideas that were steeped in ecosystem-based adaptation. And so, in this year, last year, countries would have revised their nationally determined contributions for submission to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And even in these now high-level documents, ecosystem-based adaptation is gaining center stage. And in the sectors of fisheries and farming, the persons who are on the front line of maintaining and operationalizing EBA practices are farmers and fishers, right? And again, just tying it into the circular economy, farming and fishing are industries in which we see the value and the importance of integrating circular economy principles. So, I guess in kind of tying to the idea of the forum today and the SDGs, it points to the indivisibility of the SDGs and all of the goals that we're working towards, because by achieving all and achieving one, we're achieving all. There's no way to separate the gains across these goals. But to your question, the one that you did pose to me, gender parity, again, it takes center stage across the SDGs and should be paramount in terms of the goals that we're working towards to achieve the greater good of the SDGs.
Thank you very much, Aisha. I have so many more questions that I would like to ask, and I'd also want to engage in some discussion with you, because all of you, because of the very provocative statements that you've made. There's so much more to be said, unfortunately. I'm conscious of the time, so I'm going to perhaps pose one last question and give each of you all a minute to respond, and it's a more general question. Where do you see Jamaica heading in the next 3 to 5 years as it relates to environmental sustainability? And in that question, which I'm giving you 1 minute each to answer, any advice for the UN system? Dr. Clark, maybe you can start.
Okay, no problem. I think that we have a good foundation as far as it relates to, that kind of general understanding and sensitivity. As indicated, I think previously, where we may fall down is in the actions, right? So we may have an understanding of, just generally speaking, how we should treat with the environment, but then we still, in a bus driving home, throw our garbage out or do other things that we're not directly necessarily linking to the long-term implications. And so that's one of the things I wanted to highlight in, just this discussion here is the need for what we're doing to understand that what is required is a cultural change. I know that Vision 2030 specifically looked at that issue, the issue of culture and how we actually behave versus what we may know to be the correct thing or the better way to operate. And clearly, culture is not something that we just change by signing a document or shaking hands. This is something that's going to require organic, purposeful, and active messaging, teaching, training, and that joining the dots to help persons to see the connections right across. We also will have to put in some of the solutions. If we're talking about a circular economy and a colleague, if I may call her a colleague at, I think she's at IFS now, that donut economics approach to, understand bounds within which we have to live if we wish to remain sustainable, if we wish to remain viable, not to mention adding the layer that we're a seed on top of that. It is going to require purposeful planning and execution of the same message to whatever the audience is. I'm not the marketing and communications guru, but the bottom line is that culture is far more nuanced and will require more efforts to change so that we can see clearly, okay, we have done this change and look at again, I go back to data, improvements in air quality, improvements in the way in which we fish. Some of the data in the SDR suggests that, the way how we're fishing is just not maybe the best way, on a global scale for Jamaica. And so some of these things will require the hands-on persons, literally putting on their boots and going out and demonstrating, but also the general population will require continued, interventions to try and break the cycles that contribute to the negative outcomes we observe.
Thank you, Dr. Clark. Susan, would you like to go next? And I gave her a minute, but perhaps you can take a minute as well.
Sure. I think, we have the foundation, but I think we're missing out on some of the areas we're falling short. And I think it's partly to do with the knowledge versus practice and best practice challenge, as well as we're still stuck, I think, in this conundrum of, is it environmental conservation or economic development? And somehow we still can't figure out how to manage the two. I think we need to look at construction, looking at one of the SDGs is to do with sustainable cities and communities. We have a lot of construction right now in Jamaica, roads we've done a lot of, and construction is seen as a quick way for economic development, jobs and so on. But we need to figure out how to do it in a much more environmentally sustainable way. And we know that there are examples, and certainly that's one way that the UN, with the global scope, can perhaps provide a lot of information that would help that sector in improving its sustainability.
Thank you. And finally, Aisha.
You're completely right, Mr. Sweeney. There's a lot to be said and a lot, we'd like to respond to and unpack from what our colleagues are saying. But I'm going to hasten to add, though, to the previous response that in terms of gender parity, we should also stand by, and I'm happy, I think it's Melanie mentioned it earlier, the importance of ensuring parity not just across men and women or male-female, but to understand the nuances, in terms of that gender construct. No longer is it a binary construct, and I think especially in Jamaica, I think data has been provider published recently from Jamaica to show the cost of excluding members of the LGBTQ plus community from planning. And so I want to just clarify that there's a parity there. I'm also speaking to members of that community because gender really is not a binary construct. So on the matter of environmental sustainability, again, I concur with Dr. Tukan and Dr. Clark. I think we have the makings of success in this regard in terms of the policy framework, the institutional framework, all the relevant agreements and treaties that we would have ratified at the high governmental level, I think are indicative of the fact that we are committed as a nation to pursuing green growth, pursuing environmental sustainability, and all the trappings of that. I think Christine made an excellent point in speaking to the cultural implications or the challenges that we have in that regard. And there was a question that we would have spoken if we had more time about the adoption of technologies. Jamaica recently undertook a technology needs assessment, which is to support the identification of technologies for mitigation and adaptation. And when we did the consultations and did the analysis of data from that, from those findings, we realized that it wasn't finance or legislation that was at the heart of adoption of those technologies or the lack of take-up. It was really cultural perceptions and beliefs and traditional ideas about, what was acceptable. And so there's a big role for us to or work for us to do in helping to unlearn some of these ideas and, change this narrative around environmental sustainability. And that is going to be the hardest work, really. But I want to add as well that I think in terms of the role and the work that young people are doing, we are going to be light years ahead of our times in the next 3 to 5 years because we are setting that tone and creating that path for action in that regard. And primarily, again, in climate change work, which is now tied into all the other environmental variables and goals, young people are going to ensure that Jamaica continues to transform in that regard. The rest is really up to us as, to ensure that we have that whole of society approach to meet the other targets that we have set in response to meeting the SDGs more broadly, but more so those that speak to environment and sustainability.
Thank you very much, Aisha. I have to say that your enthusiasm as a panel is infectious, and I really regret, and I should apologize to you on behalf of the organizers that we didn't have more time to delve into some of these matters. They are all very much dear to my heart, and of course, I would have loved to have engaged and even have some cross-fertilization of ideas within the panel, but unfortunately, I was advised that the time would not allow that, so I had to shorten the discussion. I do hope that we have another chance to meet and discuss, even if it's not in this forum at some other time, because you all have obviously very important ideas to share, not only with myself, but with the broader community. So I'd like to thank all three of you for your patience in being here and for your very, very constructive contribution to this partnership forum, and also to thank those who stayed on even after half an hour after this event was supposed to end. It's a demonstration of your interest in the topic. So I'll hand back over to the moderator, thanking the panel and thanking all of you again, and I look forward to having a discussion with you in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Sweeney. I truly appreciate it. You did a fantastic job facilitating, but certainly, when we look at a panel discussion, the one that took place before about, gender equality, we always know that that's going to be a very saucy panel discussion. But to have a discussion afterwards that we know was after time and to hear the points that were made, the passion with which they were made, I personally think that this panel was fire. And it just simply means that you need a part 2. There were so many points. I saw the comments coming up with persons saying absolutely they were agreeing to purposeful planning and training, understanding that there, I think it was Taj Rose who said there can hardly be a reality of economic development without sustainability. I think it was Susan who said, it's not about PR and positioning your brand, but actually doing the work and ensuring that you are trying to ensure that your SDGs are achieved. I mean, I thought there were some brilliant points, and I love the fact that they were just very candid, very open, very honest, and very frank. And so I absolutely appreciate it. And UN Jamaica, just letting you know that we have to re-invite that panel, because I think a lot more of us need to hear that kind of discussion, and certainly the point of culture having to unlearn some of the things that we believe is just normal. It's social, it's cultural, it's a part of us, it's not going anywhere. Well, we're here to tell you if we're going to achieve some of these goals, there's some things we're going to have to unlearn, and there's some things that we're going to have to relearn. And I just want to say thank you to DenQ Wedderburn. He has been there interpreting for our members of the deaf community and the hearing impaired community, not missing a beat. And I just want to say that we certainly appreciate him. He's behind the scenes, but we just want to acknowledge him in any event. We certainly hope that you've enjoyed day one of this Day 3 UN Partnership Week Forum. On Friday, we will have a workshop, but I just want to ensure and encourage you that the discussions are just going to get better and better and better, and we value your input, we value your comments, we value your questions, because that helps to drive a lot of the topics that you see here. So ensure that you come tomorrow, that you show up at 9 o'clock so that we can really unearth and flesh out a lot more ideas, and to, of course, celebrate the UN and the 76 years that they are celebrating. We want to remind you that official UN Day is October 24th. That's this Sunday. And so if you're here in Jamaica, we encourage you to go and grab a copy of the Gleaner, where you can get your own UN Day supplement. I can't wait to see what that is going to look like. For those of you who are on the VFairs platform, highly interactive, make sure that you go across to the virtual booths, the exhibit hall. There's so much there from our UN partners that you can see, the resources you can learn. To our UN partners, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for being the example. Thank you for setting the example. Thank you for showing other persons that it can be done, for giving us hope, because we know that we can absolutely achieve the goals that we want to achieve. So on behalf of UN Jamaica here, we just want to thank you so very much for tuning in, for sticking, for staying, for rocking, for rolling, for participating. I'm Dr. Terry Carol Reed, and it was a pleasure serving you as your host for day one of the 2021 UN Partnership Week. Take care. Be safe. You mean we did it? We did it, guys. We did it. Thanks for the support.